Oh, did I actually? All right. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Tuesday night live stream. I somehow, some way, I think I muted the audio at the end of that intro, but nonetheless, we're here talking about fantasy football, not talking about the intro song, despite how legendary it is. Hope you guys are doing well on this wonderful Tuesday in regards to the NFL trade deadline. A lot of noise made earlier today, and I'm sure, of course, going to talk about it, give you guys my thoughts regarding the fantasy implications of some of these trades. But over the course of today's live stream, again, for the next hour plus, we're answering any and all questions. If you guys do have a question, you can either type it in the live chat, or in order to claim priority, you can go ahead. My ending ruined. Yeah, I know, Fasty. I know. You can go ahead and claim priority by sending in a super chat. All you got to do is include your scoring format. That is greatly appreciated. Whether you did include it in your question or whether you type it in after the fact, I'll be able to get to that overall indication so that I can it'll be just easier, the process, whether it's me or somebody else in the community answering your question. It'll just be that much smoother in regards to knowing what your scoring format is, how many teams are in your league, all that kind of jazz. I greatly appreciate it, guys. Again, like I typically gone ahead and done every single Tuesday. Earlier today, I did post my top 36 running back rankings for week 10. So if you guys have any questions regarding that was posted earlier today, do me a favor, click the like button on that video and come on back here. But outside of that, let's get into answering some questions. Before I do, quick reminder, again, if you guys want my all-encompassing rankings every Sunday, be sure to check out Betr. Again, I'm putting together plays every single day. Earlier today, mentioning two NBA players in regards to the ad reading, which I had earlier today, Joel Embiid and, of course, Cole Anthony. Half of that has already hit. I think Joel Embiid's going to hit the other half and we'll be in a really good position going forward. So, of course, we'll continue to go ahead and add together plays along with the rankings that you'll get every single Sunday morning if you follow the instructions down in the description. Thank you very much. Okay, so really quickly, I want to share my thoughts on Rashid Shaheed and Jakobi Meyers being traded earlier today at the deadline and the implications of their potential move as we go into the remainder of the season. So first and foremost, I want to begin with the thumbnail of today's live stream, Rashid Shaheed, primarily because the value which he is going to have, in my opinion, can be justifiably, greater than what Jakobi Meyers may present. And I'll tell you exactly why. First and foremost, Rashid Shaheed, coming off of 2 of the last 3 games with 9 targets, was getting himself a lot of utilization within the Saints offense. And now he joins an offense that may not be throwing the ball as much, but the opportunities that he'll be kind of granted going forward will potentially include touchdown upside because of how he was utilized last season. And the reason why that's so important is because if you guys remember last year, the offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints was Clint Kubiak. He is currently the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks. There's a reason they went ahead and they traded for Shaheed. It's because of the connection the offensive coordinator and wide receiver had last year from weeks 1 through 6 prior to Shaheed's season-ending injury. Last season, in the first 6 weeks, 4 of his games in a half PPR consisted of 13.5 or more fantasy points. And in a full PPR, 16 or more fantasy points. 4 of the first 6 games of last season. Again, he only played 6 games. So when you take into account the potential for upside that he may have within this offense, as high-powered as they have been thus far this season, Sam Darnold's absolutely taking teams out with his arm. There's a lot of potential for Shaheed, especially when you take into account that, last season, as a member of the Saints, we saw a lot of utilization of Shaheed playing out wide about 75%, playing in the slot position about 25%. So if we're going to be in a position in which you may be thinking, oh, he's going to be coming in because of the Cooper Kupp hamstring injury, though you may be correct based on what the overall status of Cooper Kupp is, Cooper Kupp's playing 50%, 51% in the slot, 49% out wide. This is more of a potential negative impact upon Torrey Horton going forward unless they're going to utilize Shaheed in the slot position, which he hasn't been predominantly utilized in his career, or if they move Torrey Horton there. Time will tell, but as of right now, I think this is a bonus to the potential of Shaheed because of the touchdown upside that can be accompanied with his performances. I think in a half PPR standard, this is a boost. I think in a full PPR, it could be a lesser option because of the volume of opportunity he was recently getting within the Saints organization. But again, still relatively solid value as we persist for the remainder of the year. Now, in his absence, I think Brandon Cooks would be the man stepping up in order to try to pick up some volume there. Otherwise, Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson are the biggest benefactors of this overall move. I think this is a technical downgrade to the potential of Torrey Horton going forward. And for those of you who are potentially looking to put in a waiver wire pickup for him later tonight, I may look to the alternative options of players that I mentioned earlier this week, which consists of an Alec Pierce, a Parker Washington, a Christian Watson, or Darius Slayton, because their competition is lesser. Now, speaking of Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers was traded to, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars earlier today. Of course, we were speculating whether or not he was going to be traded for a while. This is a wide receiver that over the course of the last 4 consecutive years, 2021 to 2024, has ranked as a top 30 end of season wide receiver in full PPR every single year. Now, this could be a play very similar to the situation with Shaheed where he's joining the organization because of injury. Travis Hunter on the IR, Tim Patrick dealing with the groin, Diami Brown concussion protocol, and of course, Brian Thomas Jr., low-grade high ankle sprain. If that ankle sprain is going to force him to miss a consistent volume of time, of course, Jacoby Myers will be needed to play out wide. Because last season, as soon as we did end up seeing Devontae Adams leave the organization via the trade of the Jets, we did in fact see Jacoby Myers play out wide 70+% of the time for the Raiders. So he can accompany that outside receiver role, which this offense needs. They don't need him to play in the slot position, even though for the majority of his career, even this season, he has played a lot of slot snaps. I think as of right now, for the future of the organization, they're going to leave Parker Washington and Travis Hunter as the slot receiving option, and they're going to utilize Jacoby Myers as an outside receiving option, potentially filling in for Brian Thomas if he misses time, and of course, filling in for guys like Tim Patrick or Diami Brown, who usually will be encompassing that role as we proceed. But as of right now, I think the value of Jacoby Myers this week specifically is not going to be great as a start, primarily because he still has to learn the offense and they're taking on Houston. I think going forward, once we get to week 11, I think at that point we'll start to feel some momentum in the progression of Jacoby Myers within this offense. And honestly, the way I see it, he'll probably be top 50 wide receiver, but nowhere near the top 36 unless we are to see Brian Thomas miss some time, because there's already too many mouths to feed, especially once we have Brenton Strange returning. It's going to be really tough for him to kind of be able to establish himself as a outright starter every single week, the way that at least this offense has been trending towards kind of utilizing their wide receivers. I think the biggest benefactor of this is obviously, first and foremost, Brock Bowers. But additionally, on top of that, Trey Tucker. This could be a downgrade to Brian Thomas, considering Brian Thomas doesn't get enough target opportunity already. If it was to continue to divulge more opportunities to other wide receiver options, this continues to kind of, ruin his season as if it wasn't already. Okay, that was about 10 minutes of me talking straight for BSing these two wide receivers. Not really BSing, but just kind of giving you guys my thoughts. Again, we'll continue to divulge regarding these wide receivers probably tomorrow when we talk about wide receiver ranking going into this week. But I expect Rashid Shaheed to be more of an impactful player off the rip because he's so familiar with the lingo and the jargon of the offense that Clint Kubiak has settled within the organization of the Seahawks, considering he's played for him. So he'll probably end up playing this week. As to what kind of percentages, I could expect him to, potentially play a good amount going into the league because of his familiarity with the offense in comparison to what Jacoby Myers has to deal with learning a whole new offense, a whole new jargon, everything different going into this week. Okay, with that covered, let's get into talking about some of the questions that y'all have sent in, and let's go ahead and begin by doing so by popping it up right here on the bottom right of the screen and beginning with the motivational man, who begins our questions of the day with trade Hall for Jaylen Warren in a full PPR. I need a steady RB2. I would be more than happy to make that trade. I truly do believe not only is the upcoming strength of schedule for Jaylen Warren so superior than what Breece Hall will have to deal with, the entire Jets organization is going in the wrong direction incredibly quickly based on the fact that they traded Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner today. Again, they're going to be in negative game scripts for majority of games for the remainder of the year. And when you're in negative game scripts and your quarterbacks are rushing quarterbacks in the form of Tyrod Taylor and additionally Justin Fields, that just purely means less receiving upside for Breece Hall. And if he's not able to actualize that potential, Jaylen Warren, a significantly better option for rest of season. I wanted to go ahead and just converse really quickly the potential of value that Jaylen Warren has in terms of rest of season strength of schedule. Based on the fact that they take on the Chargers, Cincinnati, Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, just from now until the end of the fantasy football regular season, weeks 10 through 14, they have the second easiest strength of schedule throughout that span of time. So again, if you're trying to make the playoffs, I think Jaylen Warren is a fantastic pickup. If we're talking about rest of season, including the fantasy playoffs, they get Miami in week 15, which is huge for the fantasy value there. They get Detroit in week 16, which means a lot of receiving upside, and they get Cleveland in week 17, which earlier this season, he found himself a lot of success within that matchup, despite Cleveland being a solid run stop defense. He still had himself a pretty good yardage share within the overall contest. So yes, I'm more than happy to make that trade as we proceed. And there's a possibility in which, unless Breece Hall gets inked a new deal, the Jets may end up being like, oh, okay, Breece Hall, time to run you out there. And he's like, oh, my hamstring hurts. What a shame. I might not be able to play the final 5 weeks of the season. I don't know. We'll see. All right, moving on to JK's question. JK, thank you very much for the super. He says, in a full PPR, do I trade away Christian McCaffrey for Genty and Sutton? Wow, that's an interesting trade. I think it depends on what the rest of your roster looks like. It says, I currently have Darnold and Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Bucky Irving, Rashad White, Jones Jr. as in Aaron Jones, Woody Marks, Kamara, Pollard. Okay, Cade Otton is my tight end alongside of Hunter Henry, Tedero, McMillan, JSN, and Golden are my wide receivers. If not, what moves can I make to add decent wide receiver? I think what you're getting in return in this circumstance, though it does have solid value, here's the issue that I primarily have. I don't love the matchups for the Raiders going forward per se. Like looking at their upcoming schedule here, they have Denver 2 of the next 5 games. They also, in the fantasy playoffs, have to take on Philadelphia, Houston in weeks 15 and 16. To which, if I'm looking for like rest of season value, I don't know if Genty provides that, considering his rushing upside isn't as consistent as we'd like it to be. And they're most likely going to be playing from behind in majority of the games in which I'm looking at their upcoming schedule. Sure, in the upcoming weeks here against Dallas and Cleveland, he'll be solid. But once we get to the Chargers, Denver, Philadelphia, Houston, from weeks 13 through 16, it's relatively rough there. So if we're looking to potentially make this trade, I do agree 100% that you are going to get an upgrade at wide receiver. I think Sutton is significantly better option than Tedero McMillan for rest of season purposes. So JSN Sutton will be solid there. And I think that this value, in terms of what you're getting in return, is, I think, fair. I would just like to try to get another running back here instead of Genty. If I had the possibility of still going after a player of the caliber of just putting out potential names here. Actually, you know what? While we're at it, let me just throw these players up on screen. I think it depends on, this is earlier today's running back rankings, but just using it as a visual reference here. If you had the possibility of, instead of going after a Genty-esque player, if anybody in that A or B tier, actually more likely the B tier would be available. If a Kyron or a Derrick Henry could be asked upon, and you can go after one of those two, comparatively, I think it'd be a lot more beneficial to your rest of season potential here, especially if you can get a Derrick Henry, considering he didn't score a touchdown last week, but is looking as fresh as ever. So maybe HN, I doubt that you'd probably be able to get him in a full PPR considering that contribution, but I'd lean towards potentially Kyron or Henry in this circumstance in terms of rest of season potential value. I'd even be more willing to get Bucky Irving on my roster in comparison to Genty in terms of a rest of season standpoint. In regards to some players that are going on bye week, I'd even be willing to go after a Javonte Williams and pair it up with a wide receiver. Looking at other running backs who are going on bye this week, Chase Brown could be considered only if I was to get a significantly better wide receiver alongside of him in comparison to a Sutton. But if this is the best in which you can get, I would say just hit the waiver wire, go after an Alec Pierce, go after a potential Christian Watson, and try to replace T-Mac until further notice. Because I'd like to try to keep Christian McCaffrey unless I'm going to get something that I just cannot refuse. Thank you, JK. Motivational Man had a follow-up. Says PPR. How do we look in terms of playoff run? Team below. Let's see here. Let's see what you had sent in really quickly. So going back to your original question, because everything kind of... Your team that you sent in, I don't think it was just... Like, I'm looking at your most recent messages that you sent in. Nothing's really attached here in terms of your team. So whenever you get a chance, you can type that in. It says, I'm currently 9-0 in a 12-man league. For rest of season, do I go after Juwan or Loveland? In regards to Juwan Johnson or Colston Loveland, I think there is a potential justification going after Juwan Johnson, but ultimately, I think I'd rather go after Loveland because of the talent standpoint. I think Juwan Johnson's going to continue to get himself relatively solid opportunity share in the absence of Rashid Shaheed, but I always want to go after what is, in my mind, the greater upside, which I think Loveland, as of right now and for the remainder of the season, could be able to harness within the upcoming matchups ahead. But I think both are incredibly vital options that you can go after in the event in which you do not get Loveland. Juwan Johnson's a fantastic fit for rest of season. Thank you, man. And when you get a chance, type in your question. I'll go to swing on back for that. Thank you. Eddie J sends in a question. Eddie, what's up, my man? Says, hey, Andrew, in a 10-team full PPR, should I drop Jackson Dart and put a claim in for Loveland, Musgrave, or Tank? Okay. Says, I have Jay Allen and Gadsden starting. My opponent has Barkley. Okay, so here's my thought process on the matter. If you're purely looking to try to just stop the opposing team from getting value, then you would be in the business of going and picking up Tank Bigsby. But ultimately, I think what is probably in your best position here is to try to trade Jackson Dart rather than just outright drop him. Now, I understand in a 10-team league, there may not be as much of a market for him. And if in fact that is the case, considering Josh Allen has passed his bye, then yes, we can drop him and try to pick up Loveland in order to see if we can get another potential option at tight end that can kind of provide value. But not only that, fix in for Gadsden once we get to the week 12 bye. I do want to see NFL week. Let me just confirm this really quickly. I believe the Chargers are on bye week 12. They are. In that week, Chicago takes on the Pittsburgh Steelers, which over the course of this season already, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been a top 5 tight end matchup. So by the time we get there, Colston Loveland could have already solidified the job, but also be a great play in the absence of Gadsden there. So I'm willing to go after Loveland there. Again, if you wanted to go after Tank Bigsby, you can. I think by tomorrow, I think there's a higher likelihood that Saquon's fine. And I would rather use my specific waiver wire pickup on Loveland in terms of helping my team for rest of season rather than trying to just screw over my opponent for the given week and ensure that they don't have a running back to go with. But that's primarily because I think Barkley is going to be fine. Thank you. I think the only reason you'd ever pick up Tank Bigsby is just for insurance purposes. I don't think it's something that we really have to worry about. Johnny Kilroy sends in a question. Johnny, thank you, man. Says Kittle hasn't been very productive. Worth keeping for rest of season or trade? I'd rather keep him. In my mind, I would actually rather trade for him if I'm in the business of trying to improve my tight end position if I just lost Tucker Kraft. I think Kittle, what he has done in 2 of the last 3 weeks has obviously been incredibly underwhelming, but you have to take into account the quarterback play under center in the form of Mac Jones in comparison to the alternative of Brock Purdy, who should be hopefully returning this, if not next week. With Brock Purdy, the combination of those two guys have been absolutely electric over the course of the last 2 seasons here. So in my mind, I'd like to trade for Kittle in the event in which you cannot do so. In your case, Johnny, you're obviously, in my mind, in a position to which you should just keep him. If you can go out and get a better tight end, I guess you can try that. But in my mind, yeah, I'd like to keep it as is and keep it rolling because the touchdowns will eventually start to rack up. And once they do, he's just going to be an auto start blind every single week here. In the event in which you could trade him with another piece and get a lesser tight end in exchange and then another piece as well, you could go about that potential path, but I really think you'd be selling low on Kittle's potential. Shang Bull, what's up? Says I'm 4-5 in a full PPR league. Team is in the chat. Okay, sounds good. Let's see what you have here, brother. Says I have Lamar Jackson, Etienne, Mason, Henderson, Puka, Rome, Wanda Robinson, Evans, Pearsall, Gadsden, and Kelsey. What trade should I look to make? I mean, looking at your team as a whole, obviously your biggest weakness is at running back, considering Jordan Mason and Henderson are not going to be sufficient enough starts unless you're in a bye-apocalypse situation. With Etienne already past this bye week and obviously trending towards a really advantageous schedule ahead, I think he's a great RB1 for you rest of season. In terms of other potential running backs that you could go after in order to acquire, I would potentially go knocking on doors, again, of teams in your league who may be sitting at a 2-7, 3-6 record, who are in desperate positions and just lost players due to either a bye week, and you may be able to cash in on that. In terms of players that have relatively strong strength of schedule ahead, again, I would be in the business of trying to go get a Judkins. I would be in the business of trying to go after a Jalen Warren. In your case, at 4-5, I don't think you can go and buy Omarion Hampton as much as I would like to do so. I also don't think at 4-5, you're in a position to go trade for players that are on a bye week. So I think it puts you in a really precarious position to where you can't be going out and trading for a Chase Brown right now, or a Javonte Williams, or a Bucky Irving, or a Hampton, because you can't risk the potential of them missing time. So in this case, in terms of upgrading your RB2 in this circumstance, you're kind of in a tough bind here, to which, looking across the board, maybe your play is to go after a Woody Marks or a Tracy, players that didn't play well last week that could be so like kind of sell low prospect or buy low prospects, sell low for the other teams. You can buy low on their potential and try to cash in on their upcoming schedule ahead. I mean, just looking at the upcoming schedule for Houston, yes, they have Jacksonville this week, but then they have Tennessee, Buffalo, Indianapolis, which all three can be taken advantage of in terms of rushing statistics, especially considering, Tennessee and Buffalo are 2 of the top 5 running back matchups there. I think Woody Marks could be a potential play in terms of a trading option that you can go after. That would be my immediate thought process at in this current moment. Outside of that, again, Judkins potentially coming off of the bye, coming off of injury could be a potential play. Otherwise, you just go after waiver wire. Maybe you go pick up Samson and hope that Judkins doesn't play this week, or you go after Tank Bigsby and hope that Saquon Barkley misses. Ultimately, outside of that, I think your wide receivers and your tight ends are relatively solid. Until Kelsey returns, I think you're probably in a position where you might just want to move Kelsey via trade, or just hold him until Kelsey returns next week, then move Gadsden effectively, because you have two technical top 6 tight ends rest of the season, maybe top 7 if we're being generous here, to which if both of them are healthy, you can start one in the flex as well, to which I think that is also a plan of action you should probably explore, to which you just go Kelsey, Gadsden, a tight end, and flex, and then you just keep it as is, and the only thing you're trying to upgrade is at this overall position and trying to buy low there. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Justin sends in a question. Justin, what's up, my man? Says, I'm in a 12-man full PPR. I have Genty and Henry. Should I trade one of them for Dowdle? Also, what are your thoughts on Marvin Harrison for rest of season? Well, earlier today, something that I didn't mention in the beginning of today's live stream, which was incredibly important, which I'm going to now mention, is that Jacoby Brissett has now been designated the starting quarterback until further notice for the Arizona Cardinals, as Kyler Murray currently is dealing with that midfoot sprain. Again, many of us are believing to think that this is a Liz Frank injury. If you guys are understanding of what a Liz Frank is, it's basically the arch of your foot collapsing into destruction. So in the case in which that is the situation here for Kyler Murray, they've obviously flown in multiple specialists regarding his foot, and they have designated that he is going to need a lot of time to rehab. And honestly, this is perfect for fantasy purposes, considering Jacoby Brissett has elevated Marvin Harrison and most effectively Trey McBride to being a touchdown machine. So going forward, Marvin Harrison looking like he's in a relatively strong position, on top of the fact that his upcoming schedule ahead here, relatively advantageous. Looking at rest of season strength of schedule for wide receivers, I mean, in terms of Arizona, for specifically even once we get deeper into season, I think in the fantasy playoffs, it's a little bit of a disaster. I might not want to have him on roster taking on Houston in week 15. But in terms of between now and week 14, he's got the technical, if I'm not mistaken, let's see. He has the 6th easiest strength of schedule between now and in the end of the fantasy football regular season. Unfortunately, has a bye this week. But So, okay, never mind. I'm looking at the wrong one. Yes, he has the 6th. No, he has the 7th easiest strength of schedule with Seattle, San Francisco, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, LA Rams. All matchups in which they'll be down and throwing the ball for majority of the game. So really excited about the potential of Marvin Harrison and McBride going forward. Not too excited about the run game too much, because the fact that you don't have a rushing quarterback limits the overall potential of the run stopping. Like, the backside defensive end can't crash down when Kyler's out there, right? He has to keep a relatively solid position, to which he has to respect the rushing upside of a Kyler Murray, which in this case will no longer exist. Nonetheless, am I trading for Dowdle in the form of moving Genty or Henry? I would say there's relative risk in it, depending on what Dowdle's health looks like as we persist. But looking at his overall situation here, let me just make sure there isn't anything that... Yeah, in this current... My thought process is I would like to trade Genty for Dowdle. Is it highly risky? Yes. Because there is a potential in which Dowdle, at any given moment... I'm actually not even too worried about him. Yeah, let's do that. I'm okay making a trade in which I'm sending Genty away for Dowdle, because he's just been unstoppable. I'm going to just ride the train there and just continue to roll with the hype train of Rico Dowdle leading us to the promised land. Thank you. Oni, what's up? Says, thoughts on Spears for Tootin. Also, Bucky for Chase. Okay, hold up. I don't understand this trade. Spears, I think, is going to have more value than Pollard rest of season. I think that has already been established over the course of the last 3 weeks of production in terms of overall snap share and touches between the two of them. I mean, this is another game in which, again, Spears is getting himself a relatively solid workload share of opportunity. And even though, yes, technically, the vast majority of the rushing attempts went in the direction of Tony Pollard, I think the receiving utilization is what we really want in a full PPR capacity. So I would like to have Spears because I think I can flex him within a given week ahead. And Tootin is purely just only there for kind of handcuff purposes until further notice. Now, as for Bucky Irving for Chase Brown, I would rather have Bucky Irving rest of the way. I understand that the upcoming games for Chase Brown and this offense is going to look like a bunch of shootouts. And obviously, 14 targets, 8 receptions is a huge deal. But I truly do believe that the upside of which Bucky does have associated with this offense, the touchdown upside that he'll be presented, assuming he's healthy this week, is a little bit more valuable in my mind. Thank you. Salted Pork sends in a question. Says, I lost Daniels to an injury. I can try to pick up Darnold or McCaffrey on waivers, or I have been offered Dart and Kenneth Walker for Chase Brown. Yeah, so this is, oh, sorry, it's not McCaffrey, it's McCarthy, excuse me. So here's my suggestion. Do not take this trade yet. I would wait and let's see if we can make a trade in which we can get Darnold. This being said, I don't mind this trade in the event in which you do not get Darnold. If Darnold gets picked up prior to you, I think this is a fantastic trade because Dart doesn't have a bye week until week 14, and Kenneth Walker has finally started to get goal line attempts inside the 5-yard line, which I think is relatively promising as we proceed for the remainder of the season. So in the event in which you cannot get Darnold, make this trade. I don't care for McCarthy here. I'd rather have Dart and Kenneth Walker, and I'd rather give up Chase Brown to accomplish that. Thank you. Before I continue, I wanted to see if Motivational Man sent in his question in regards to his team. Oh, he ended up sending a super. You should have just typed it in the chat, but I do appreciate that. It says playoff team is Lamar, CD, Devontae Adams, Sutton, Christian McCaffrey, Hall, Loveland, Hampton, or Walker in my flex. Bench is Watson, Coker, Jawan Jennings, Daniel Jones, Horton, and Washington. I think Coker can be dropped. I think that's an outright potential position there. In regards to looking at your team for rest of season, specifically in the fantasy playoffs, I really don't want anything to do with Breece Hall once I get there. So if I can offload him now, that would be preferred, especially considering they take on Jacksonville in week 15, and then they have New England in week 17, which is a disaster at that point. New England's matchup is not a pretty one, especially for the Jets offense, in which they probably won't be able to move the ball in that game, much less. So as of right now, Breece Hall is where I'm trying to get out of. Again, you'll have Hampton and Walker at that point, but if you're able to at least bring in some comparable value in the meanwhile, again, earlier today I mentioned that someone should be trading Hall for Jaylen Warren. In the case of your situation, oh, that's you again, by the way. Yeah, let's make that trade. And at that point, I think you'll have a fantastic team for the fantasy playoffs and beyond. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit sketchy relying upon Loveland until we get an idea as to what he's going to look like in terms of solidification once Kmet is back. But even then, with Kmet back, I think he looked relatively solid this most recent week. So I know the concussion obviously knocked him out mid-second quarter, but I think going forward, it's going to be Loveland's job. Thank you. Alrighty, we continue with Salted Pork. We took care of that one. We move on to Nathan Gutierrez. Nathan, thank you, man. Says, hey, Andrew, I'm at 4 and 5. Running backs are Henry, Hunt, Stevenson, Hubbard. Wide receivers are Rashee Rice, Drake London, Kupp, Myers, and tight end is Gadsden and TJ Hawkins. And quarterbacks are Mahomes and Fields. Where does Myers fall into? Should I trade? I mean, Myers at this point is never going to start on your team unless Brian Thomas Jr. is going to miss significant time. Ultimately, your roster is going to be on the back of Henry as your RB1, Rashee and Drake as your wide receiver 1 and 2, Gadsden as your tight end, Mahomes as your quarterback, and your RB2 and flex is going to be kind of a toss-up. Perhaps you could end up having your RB2 be Stevenson because Hubbard's not going to have value and Hunt is going to diminish his value once Pacheco returns, to which Myers could end up being your flex. Ultimately, I would look to try to go make some moves in terms of waiver wire pickups, or maybe see if someone in your league is foolish enough to trade for Myers in the event in which, again, Brian Thomas's injury is not as serious as originally anticipated, and they could be just trying to buy the hype of the overall potential of Myers in this case. But as of right now, certainly got to upgrade that flex position because of the available options you have. Running back's a little bit of a dead zone here, to which outside of Henry and Stevenson, we're in a little bit of a drop-off position to where we're in trouble. Yeah, Myers, again, can be flexible, but I'm not really looking to try to flex him unless Brian Thomas misses time as we go forward here. If you can make some trades, probably a good plan of action. How you would accomplish that is probably off of the back of maybe moving Drake London in order to accomplish that. You could move Drake to try to get a running back and a wide receiver in return. I think that's probably a plan in which you could end up going for, assuming you don't want to move him, which I think it would be tough for you to probably move considering what he just did in this most recent week. Chico 410, what's up, my man? Thank you, Chico. Chico says Downs, Watson, Woody, or Charbonnet in the flex. As of right now, between the 4 available options here, I think it depends on a couple factors. For right now, in a full PPR, not too interested in Charbonnet because he has to score a touchdown. Woody Marks is in a relatively tough matchup and has a backup quarterback, so I don't love that. So it's between Downs and Watson, to which I'd probably lean towards playing Downs, considering I do anticipate a little bit higher of a reception count in comparison to Watson, who, yes, technically has a lot of kind of high upside potential for one ball that makes his entire week, but I'd probably prefer to just stick with Downs in this circumstance. Thank you. Awesome person says, greetings, Andrew. Questions in the chat. Thank you. Awesome. I appreciate it. Says full PPR, trade Swift and Diggs, or Devontae Smith for Javonte Williams? If yes, which two wide receivers would you rather give up? Which of the two wide receivers would you rather give up? Rest of my team consisting of Nix, Derrick Henry, Charbonnet, JSN, CeeDee Lamb, Dobbs, Pitts, and Kincaid. Okay, so of your available options, I would prefer to get rid of Diggs if I was to make this trade. But the only reason I would genuinely make this trade is if, in fact, Swift is going to miss more time with the hamstring. Like, I look at the upcoming schedule ahead, and I understand his fantasy playoff schedule is not pretty against Cleveland, Green Bay, San Francisco. And I can clearly see that it may be a little bit of a rough going there throughout those weeks in comparison to potentially Minnesota, Los Angeles, and Washington for Javonte Williams here. But if I was going to make this trade, I mean, I'm looking at your roster. Okay, theoretically, for the remainder of the season, you start Derrick Henry, Javonte Williams. Then you would have JSN, CeeDee Lamb. You'd have Pitts or Kincaid at tight end, and in your flex option would have to be Dobbs. In your kind of, or actually, no, technically it would be like Devontae Smith. You know what? If you look at your upcoming schedule ahead, and these kind of bye weeks with CeeDee Lamb being out this week, and the potential of not having Javonte this week, if that's not going to bother you and it's not going to make a potential negative impact upon your potential to succeed this week and make the playoffs because you may end up losing this week, I'm willing to make that trade in terms of sending Swift and Diggs. Thank you. If you play in a double flex league, like 2 wide receivers, 2 flex, or 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, I don't make that trade. I keep the depth. Thank you. All right, continuing on. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. Again, I am very much so long-winded today, but I am trying to catch up to the best of my ability. We could continue with Danny D. Danny, what's up, my man? Says in a 1-quarterback league, I got JD5 owner. In need of a quarterback, I have Purdy, or I can pick up either Mac Jones, Mariota, Brissett, or Penix. Also, drop Ertz for Fannin or Njoku. I would like to drop Ertz in order to pick up Fannin going forward. I think both of them are very much so going to be utilized within this offense as a tight end heavy approach. There's a reason why they did not trade Njoku prior to the deadline to the Green Bay Packers, which was the predominant rumor that was going around considering Tucker Kraft's injury. Considering they kept them both, I expect Fannin to get a lot of workload as we proceed. As long as Njoku and him are both healthy, they're going to be lesser options, but still better than Ertz. In regards to the situation, though, if I was you, I mean, honestly, I'd like to go pick up probably Mac Jones, assuming Purdy doesn't play. But then my second best option, I think, at that point is Brissett, considering the matchup and, of course, how well he's played. Abram says, ETN or Dowdle PPR? I'd much rather play Dowdle this week and probably rest of season. Pick up 2 rest of season, Sutton, McConkey, or Pittman. If I was going to have 2 of these 3 on roster for rest of season in a half PPR scoring format, let me look at this schedule ahead real quick. Because I honestly think they're all within that same similar range. And they're all so much so reliant on that touchdown potential on a weekly basis. But looking at your availables here, I probably feel most comfortable going with McConkey Pittman for rest of season. Those are the 2 that I would prefer to have on roster. Thank you, Abram. Luke Fernando says, traded away Gibbs and Mahomes for Saquon, Olave, and Kelsey in a full PPR. I have Chase Brown, AJ Brown, Cortland Sutton, Woody Marks, Keenan Allen, Golden Thoughts. Okay, so basically your starting lineup will consist of Saquon, Chase Brown, AJ Brown, Olave, Sutton, and then within the flex, Olave or Sutton in the flex, whichever it ends up being. So 2-2, and then your 1 at the tight, and then your 1 in flex, and then tight end would end up being Kelsey. You have the potential of utilizing Woody Marks in an upcoming bye week, for example, for this week with Chase Brown out. I mean, honestly, I like the trade. I don't know who your quarterback is, which I think is very much so vital to the entire equation because Mahomes has been so great this season and will be, great going forward because they don't have to play Buffalo every single week. So in the event in which you have a quarterback that is very much so a comparable player, at least in the top 8 for the remainder of the season, I think it's a fantastic trade in terms of the value you bring in because Saquon's trending in the right direction. Kelsey's been incredible as of late, and Olave, ultimately, in the absence of Shaheed, should see himself even more target opportunity share. Jojo, what's up? Says, salutations. Thanks for all the help this year, Andrew. Have a big trade I need help with. I'll post it in the chat. Okay, thank you very much, Jojo. Let's see what you have here, brother. Jojo says, in a 10-team half PPR league, my team consists of Mahomes, Henry, Kyron, Saquon, Brown, Rice, Sutton, Ladd, and Diggs, along with Ferguson as my tight end. I got offered a big trade, Lamar, Tedero, McMillan, Kittle, and Seattle's defense for Rice. It's a two-keeper league. and have Rice as an 8th, do I do it? Okay, looking at the team as a whole, I'm not sure why. Okay, so here's my only question on the matter. If I'm trading away Rashee Rice here, can I then flip Mahomes in order to go get another wide receiver? Like, Lamar would be my quarterback that I would like to keep on roster the rest of the way. And I would try to ship away Mahomes because Lamar's past his bye and Mahomes is currently in his bye week. Obviously, like Kittle versus Ferguson, I think rest of season, having them both doesn't make sense. So can I ship Ferguson this week as well? If I can do this to where I can ship Ferguson, ship Mahomes, and I can go and I can also take Tedder and McMillan and take those 3 and go effectively trade for a wide receiver, I would do this trade. Even in a keeper league in which I don't have the opportunity to keep Rice in the future, I'm just looking towards, can I win a championship this year? And if you do believe that your league is trade savvy enough to where they'd be willing to take Mahomes or Ferguson or Tedder McMillan as a 3-for-2 trade or a 3-for-1 trade in which you can upgrade your wide receiver, I make the move. And I try to go win a chip this year because I think Lamar and Kittle are upgrades at tight end and quarterback. And all you would need is that point to utilize the rest of your depth in order to bring in a wide receiver. And if you can accomplish that, I think that gives you an opportunity of winning the chip. And if you can do that, I mean, it's worth the trade in its entirety. Thank you. G. Medina says, hi, Andrew. Questions in the chat. Thank you, Medina. This is in a full PPR. I need a tight end replacement, possibly 2 for rest of season. For craft on waivers, we have Loveland, Juwan Johnson, Barner, Mason Taylor, and Musgrave. Thanks. These are your 2 best options. It should be Loveland number 1 and Juwan Johnson number 2. And I think you should probably go after both and roster them both in order to see if, in fact, if Loveland can sustain for multiple weeks. In the event in which he cannot, at least you'll have the availability of the backup potential of Juwan Johnson in the future of this season. But I think both those guys should be the 1-2 options as you go after. In the event in which you're not able to get either of them because potentially other teams in your league utilize their waiver priority or fab in order to claim them, I think your next best option for rest of season purposes is most likely Musgrave, considering the tight end utilization within that Packers organization near the red zone. Thank you. Gerardo Rodriguez says, hey, team is Baker, Dart, Christian McCaffrey, Henry Chase, Bucky Dowdle, Devontae Pittman, Wilson, Tez Johnson, Kincaid, and Goddard. Do I trade Chase for Sutton? Chase Brown for Sutton? I don't know if I'm willing to make that trade. Like, I understand that you have incredible... Well, okay, so here's my thought process on the matter. When I look at the rest of season wide receiver strength of schedule here, okay, and I look at their upcoming schedule ahead, like, I don't mind the potential of what Denver has in the fantasy playoffs, taking on Green Bay, Jacksonville, Kansas City, but I don't love it. I'm not in love with the potential there. To which, when I look at having Pittman and Wilson, as we get later in the year, I might end up just playing Pittman and Wilson ahead of Sutton in this circumstance. So if I'm going to trade away Chase Brown, maybe I could potentially get somebody of a better capacity. Maybe I can go after a Ladd McConkey in this circumstance. Maybe I can go after, I mean, there's not going to be too many options that are significant. Maybe you can go after an A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle. Those would be the names that I want to try to go after to begin with. In the event in which you cannot, then sure, we can make this trade and go after that to kind of solidify your wide receiver depth as you kind of push forward to the fantasy playoffs. Thank you. The man 0907 says, RIP Kraft. I agree. That sucks, man. He was on an absolute tear this season. Half PPR. I have Ferguson, but I need to fill in for this week. Options are Fannin, Schultz, Juwan Johnson, Otten, and Musgrave. Should I use this week, then drop or stick with Ferguson? I think you should stick with Ferguson. I understand that he's been a little bit of a dud in the last 2 games here. But I think going forward, again, this offense is going to be better because their defense should be a little bit more, competent, I would say, to say the very least. But in regards to the potential of these tight ends for this week, I think it depends. Let me look at the schedule in terms of who each team is playing. I haven't really done much of my research on tight ends yet. I usually hold that for Wednesday afternoons prior to the Thursday ranking video. But in regards to the players that you have mentioned here, Fannin, Schultz, Juwan Johnson, Otten, Musgrave. Okay. Looking at how you could potentially go after some of these options, if in fact Chris Godwin, if Chris Godwin doesn't play this week, I think there's an argument to be made to go after Otten for the 1 week pickup and play. Otherwise, I really do like Juwan Johnson in his upcoming matchup against the Carolina Panthers, considering that's been an advantageous matchup for tight ends this year. Outside of that, I think your next best option would be to go after Schultz because I like that matchup against Jacksonville. And then if you're looking for rest of season potential, which again I wouldn't, I guess you could go for Fannin or Musgrave as kind of, actually no, you would go with Fannin first and then Juwan Johnson second. But ultimately, I think this week, if I was gonna go to pick up a player here, I would just go pick up Juwan Johnson because I think he can provide me value not only this week in terms of the matchup and the opportunity share, but he could also provide me value rest of season because he has shown earlier this year that he can handle a relatively solid opportunity share. So I'd go with Juwan Johnson in this circumstance and just roster 2 tight ends going forward. Mo sends in a question. Says drop Kamara for Tracy or Tracy for Shaheed. Yeah, I would be willing to drop Kamara, genuinely. I think at this point, I think the potential of him kind of making a bounce back, it might be possible, but the opportunity share in which he's being exposed to is not enough for me to consider it. Pats or Colts this week and rest of season. Rest of season is a little bit of a tricky thing because I think every single week the situation changes for defenses, specifically because of matchups and additionally because of injuries. But bringing in Sauce Gardner certainly does make a huge difference here. But in the case of playing Tampa Bay, I would honestly rather play the Colts defense against the Atlanta Falcons rather than the Patriots against Tampa Bay's offense this week that's coming off of the bye. Thanks, Mo. All right, continuing on. We had a question from Jerome Hill. What's up, Jerome? Says, is Godwin and McLaurin a wash? I think you asked me this the other day. Should I drop one for Christian Watson? Should I drop Pitts for Loveland this week versus rest of season? I honestly do not mind the idea of going after Loveland here because I think the value of what a offense that has their coordinator and primary play caller as, you know, what the Bears' current situation looks like provides a little bit more value to Loveland than I think what Kyle Pitts will be exposed to. So I'd like to actually go after Loveland here. I think there's a lot of risk in making this move, but I'm willing to take it. As for dropping Godwin or McLaurin for Watson, I mean, McLaurin is kind of just an IR monster. You can leave him there. Same thing with Godwin. So I'm going to leave McLaurin there. I'm not thinking he's a wash as of yet. Godwin, on the other hand, could be, but it just depends on what his practice status is for tomorrow. Am I willing to drop him right now for Christian Watson? Probably not, because eventually Jaden Reed will come back and Golden's still in the mix there. Thank you. Blaze, what's up, my man? Says, any trades I should make? I have Baker, Darnold, JT, Genty, Lamb, DK, Diggs, Jacoby, McBride, Gadsden, Rico, JCM, and Harvey. Is JCM droppable? In your case, if you're playing in like a 10-team league, I would say sure. But I think it's just a matter of what are you going to pick up. Says my sus about my wide receivers. Yeah, looking at your wide receiver depth as a whole, like Lamb, DK, and Diggs will get the job done as you kind of go forward. I think one of these 2 tight ends need to be traded. Specifically, I'm looking to try to trade Gadsden because I would like to keep McBride with Brissett continuing to get him a lot of utilization down near the red zone. So if you can move Gadsden to try to go improve your wide receiver 2/3, I think that's probably the best plan of action as you kind of go forward here, to which you have the opportunity to maybe go trade for players of, you know, a higher caliber than what you have. You might be able to send Gadsden and Diggs for a wide receiver or Gadsden and DK for a wide receiver. If that's a possibility in a team in your league that is tight end needy, maybe the league team that lost Tucker Kraft, I think that could be an option for you going forward here. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. But otherwise, rest of the team looks really, really solid here with Baker, McBride, JT, Genty, Lamb, Diggs. Again, relatively solid team there. To which even that, you have Rico Dowdle, which shoots your triforce of running backs is relatively solid. Harvey's been great, but yeah, JCM, I would hold him because he's got a solid fantasy playoff schedule. But if you actually are going to get some sort of value in return, a startable player going forward, then you can probably drop him. Otherwise, I'd keep him and just wait. Next, the 806 says full PPR. Who do I pick up? Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, or Alec Pierce? Genuinely, I would pick up Alec Pierce. I want the player that is being given 10 plus targets each of the last 2 weeks, that is in an offense that is the highest scoring of the bunch. I don't really like Trey Tucker because even in the weeks in which Myers missed with injuries, Trey Tucker was very much so a he was just a wide receiver 3, low end at that in those given weeks. So when I look at the potential, what he could provide for me for fantasy purposes, rest of the way, even in the absence of Jacoby Myers, do I believe he is going to be sustainable enough to where I can outright trade. I mean, I can outright trust him every week. Not entirely. Like, I look at his overall production in a half PPR weeks 5 and 6. Like, he's putting up 9 points each of those 2 weeks. Like, I'm going after Alec Pierce if I have a choice. Next best option, I think, would be Trey Tucker, and then third would be Jacoby Myers. Myers, again, is very much so a toss-up because of the injury status of BTJ not being really known at the moment. Heinze, 347 says, my wide receiver room is Nakua, Adunze, yeah, with a donut, yeah, this last week. Sutton, Garrett Wilson. Thoughts on an offer of Adunze and Sutton for St. Brown? And who would be a good flip? Who would I flip for Wilson? That's an interesting question. I think you have to wait for Wilson to come back and put up a couple solid performances because you flip him, or like before you can flip him. But then again, the upcoming matchups here aren't the easiest. If I was going to try to flip Wilson, I would try to legitimately flip him for a top tier option at wide receiver. Like, I'm not too willing to sell him for a player outside. Like, if I can get him flips for Michael Pittman, I would. But outside of that, like those kind of tier players, that's where I think Garrett Wilson will exist rest of season. Now, as for your trade of trading Adunze and Sutton in order to get St. Brown, considering Nakua's passed his bye, St. Brown has passed his bye, and so is Garrett Wilson, I think you can survive with those three. It's just purely a matter of like, how many wide receivers can you start in your league? 2 or 3. If you can start 3, I keep what you have. How many flex can you start in your league? If you could play 2 wide receivers and 2 flex, I keep what you have. And then additionally, if you're going to give a 2-for-1, who's playing in your current flex position and what kind of value do they currently have? In the event in which you have a very unsustainable flex spot, I'm not making this trade. There's a lot that goes against this trade because you'd have to be set across the board with studs everywhere to be able to justify a trade of this magnitude, because I think Adunze is only going to bounce back and so is Sutton, to the point to where you may regret this move if you don't have a solidified flexible option, or if you could start 3 wide receivers or 2 flex within your league. Thank you. Let's see here. Top 6 picks for Raiders-Broncos game in order. What are your top 6 picks? I don't know what you mean by top 6 picks. As in like potential better plays going into this week? Is that what you're kind of referring to? If that's what you're referring to, then I think we can have a discussion regarding it. Probably once I take a look at it. Let's see what we could potentially put together here in terms of things that I like. Give me a moment here. Okay, so in terms of potential like picks for this week on Thursday night, obviously with the trade of, the movement of Jacoby Myers off this organization, I think it does provide a little bit of value here for the potential of Brock Bowers. I want to see what Brock Bowers has done last season against this defense specifically. Let me go ahead and pull that real quick. So last season against the Denver Broncos, Brock Bowers, 10 targets, 4 catches, 38, 12 targets, 8 catches, 97, and a touchdown. Second time against him, they locked him down relatively tight. But ultimately, I think he's probably in line for a relatively solid reception count this week, to which, if I look at his reception, 6.5 is relatively expensive in my mind, relatively tough for me to justify. I'd like 5.5 at that position. I'd like to assume that the receiving workload of Genty is going to be relatively solid to where I'm willing to go after 2.5. Because again, if you're going to be down for a majority of this game in a negative script, I would assume that there's going to be a possibility in which he should get himself a healthy enough target opportunity share in comparison to against that Tennessee Titans game where they were running the ball heavily, and against that Kansas City game in which they weren't able to even convert their downs, much less. So as of right now, those are 2 relatively solid plays for the side of the offense of the Raiders. I honestly also think that there's a potential in which if you take Geno Smith with an anytime interception, I mean, again, he's done it almost every week. So why not again this week? Especially in a negative script against that defense, feels like a relatively solid potential for that to occur. I like the potential of this man at 3.5 receptions. I think that's the cheapest it's ever been at in terms of the overall, the product of his game. I understand that he's been a little bit of a dud as of late, but taking on Houston is no joke, and taking on Sauce Gardner is no joke. But I don't believe that the Raiders have Sauce Gardner, nor do they have Derek Stingley and Lassiter. So I think the potential 3.5 receptions, honestly, I might as well just take this right now, right? I mean, like, sheesh. I think those are some relatively solid plays. I also like the potential of the rushing upside of J.K. Dobbins this week. Again, I've mentioned it earlier. The overall rushing workload that he has seen, I think it's like 14 plus rushing attempts in 8 of the last 9 games. So the idea of him being able to surpass 11.5 is an automatic. I mean, obviously, if that number goes upward and it becomes a little bit of a better odd, I would like that. I think Bo Nix 2 touchdowns is probably relatively solid here. Obviously, hasn't been the most consistent, but as of late, relatively been on fire. So those would be the relative plays there. So Genty receptions, Brock Bowers receptions, Cortland Sutton receptions, the interception of Geno, and then the touchdowns of Bo Nix. Again, I'm sure you can tell what kind of a game I'm anticipating this to be. I think it's going to be a one-sided affair and a game in which we should see a lot of garbage time from the Raiders in this circumstance. Thanks, man. Hopefully that helps. All right, continuing on, we have Mass Space says, would you trade Bijan for Jamar Chase? In a full PPR, I'd probably say yes. In the event in which we're looking for rest of season value, Jamar Chase is just so ridiculous with Flacco that I'd be willing to make the move in a full PPR. Thank you. Russell Pace says, I'm starting Hurts, Achane, Taylor, Sutton, and Waddle. Should I flex Monungai, McConkey, Dobbins, or Olave? Okay. Monungai is 100% dependent on DeAndre Swift's status. In the event in which DeAndre Swift is inactive for a second consecutive game, Monungai is your outright starter. Otherwise, I would suggest you probably end up playing McConkey this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Thank you. Motivational man, we took care of that earlier. Rudy, what's up? Says, I'm 4-5 in a full PPR. We have Jackson Dart, we have Sam Darnold, Nico, Rice, Flowers, Ladd, Gibbs, Javonte, Etienne, Charbonnet. Brother, this is such a good team. Marks, McBride, Javante's on a bye. Do I trade Javonte and Etienne for Judkins or Rico? I think that is not worth it. I think you're giving up too much value in comparison to what you're getting in return. If I was going to trade away 2 top potential 15 running backs for rest of season purposes in exchange for 1 running back, I would like to get back Bijan Robinson in this exchange. Genuinely, because from what we have seen thus far this year, we're talking about Javonte Williams, who's not the Javonte Williams of the preseason. This is a top, 6 running back for fantasy purposes thus far this season. What are you playing in? You're playing in a full PPR on top of that. Thus far this season, Javonte Williams has been the number 6 overall running back, averaging 17.3 fantasy points per game. And then on top of that, we have Etienne thus far this season, who has been on a position to where he's been averaging 13.5 fantasy points per game. If I'm trading 2 running backs of this caliber, I better get back Bijan Robinson at a base minimum. Despite the fact that you have studs across the board, if I'm going to move these 2 players, that's what I want in exchange. Otherwise, I'm keeping it. I don't think Rico and Judkins justify it. Rico and Judkins justifies it. Otherwise, no, I'm not making that move, man. Thank you. Maybe do Javonte for Judkins. I think that's a little bit more of an applicable potential route, but the issue is Judkins' shoulder. I would wait till tomorrow to see what Judkins' practice status is. If he's limited or at least at a full participation, one of those 2, then I'm willing to make the move. Otherwise, no. Thank you. H. Jockish says, Pinheiro or McLaughlin rest of season. I've been asked this multiple times today. I think with Brock Purdy eventually coming back, I think the value of Pinheiro is going to be sufficient enough to where I would like to continue to have him on roster. McLaughlin is still very much so a very valuable kicker, but as of late has kind of slowed down considering a lot of the offensive pieces, Evans, Godwin, Bucky have been absent. Once those guys return near the fantasy playoffs, McLaughlin's going to go up in terms of his production share. But for now, I'm still going to stick with Pinheiro. Says I just traded Tedero McMillan for DK Metcalf in a PPR. Thoughts? I think that's a steal. I think Tedero McMillan, considering the offense and where it's trending, I'd much rather have DK for rest of season purposes, despite the fact that he is touchdown dependent. At least he scores touchdowns in comparison. Johnny Kilroy says, I have McBride considering trading Kelsey for Jalen Warren. Kittle, for Jalen Warren. I would make that trade immediately. If you can get that done, you should do it. But the thing is, is Jalen Warren even going to play on this team? Maybe. But ultimately, I think it's still a big enough trade to where Jalen Warren is going to have big performances here, where you can maybe even flip him in the future as we go forward. Emily Doyle sends out a question. Emily, thank you very much. Says, so many questions. Yeah. But first, drop JCM for Tracy. Yes, I would. Absolutely. All right, let's see what you have here, Emily. Says, okay, so yes, I would drop Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt to pick up Tracy. As for dropping Ertz for Loveland, I would absolutely do that as well. You have Laporta, that's fine. Continue to play Laporta, but have Loveland there just in case if Loveland becomes a startable option, you can ship off Laporta and then play Loveland for the rest of the season or vice versa. And then Shaheed worth keeping? Absolutely. Or drop for Parker Washington? No, I would keep Shaheed. I think the value in which he is going to provide is going to be solid. I think what Parker Washington provides could get potentially 8 up by Jacoby Myers as we go forward, depending on the injury status of Brian Thomas Jr. and if, in fact, Jacoby Myers may take over that slot receiving role in which currently Parker Washington is inhabiting. But for now, I would continue to keep with Shaheed there, considering it, as of right now, what it looks like, them making that trade is that Cooper Kupp could be missing a significant volume of time with the hamstring. Gio Ortiz sends in a question. Gio, thank you. Says, Rico or Swift rest of season PPR? Offered my Swift for Rico. I'd rather have Rico. The primary reason in which I say so is because Swift has a groin injury right now, and he also has Kyle Monangai, who's playing out of his mind in his back pocket. This could end up, quite frankly, looking like a two-headed monster, very similar to which, of course, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs existed last season. But I don't think this is a talented enough offense to be able to, justify starting both every week, to which one of the two could end up getting screwed over depending on the goal line opportunities, while Rico is just the outright number one going forward. Shung sends in a question, says, would it be crazy to trade Puka for Judkins or Kyren and Sutton? Yes, I think it would be crazy, but I could justify the decision of making a move to where I'm getting Kyren and Sutton in return only if you're super desperate for a running back. But here's the thing. If I'm going to trade away Puka Nacua, who thus far this season has played as well as he has when healthy, I feel like that's just, you'd have to be super desperate because he's averaging 23 points per, actually, not even 23. He's actually, when healthy, even better in a full PPR capacity. Let me see here. 161.6. 161. No, that's not what I wanted to do. 161.6 divided minus 4.8 divided by a total of 6 games. He's averaging 26 fantasy points per game. So genuinely, he's pretty much more valuable than Kyren and Sutton combined, to which if you make the trade, you have to be incredibly desperate. Otherwise, I'd probably just keep because he's literally worth two players on a weekly basis there. Andy says, yo, Andrew, trade question in the chat. Cheers. Thank you, Andy. Andy says, in a 10-team half PPR 5-4 record, I'm thinking of sending one of Judkins, Chase Brown, and Jaylen Warren for one of Garrett Wilson or AJ Brown. I have Christian McCaffrey. Current best wide receiver is Ibuka. Which one for one is best? I genuinely would target and try to get AJ Brown on my roster, primarily because I think the direction that the Philadelphia Eagles are trending towards past the bye week is a lot more of a better trajectory in comparison to where Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor will be able to take Garrett Wilson in this circumstance. And looking at the upcoming schedule ahead, technically for rest of season weeks 10 through 17, the Philadelphia Eagles currently have the second easiest strength of schedule, as their upcoming schedule consists of Green Bay, Detroit, Dallas, Chicago, the Los Angeles Chargers, and then just that is the regular season remaining. Okay, that's all shootouts. Then you have in the fantasy playoffs, Las Vegas, Washington with no Marshawn Lattimore, and then Buffalo, another shootout. I think this is all in the favor of AJ Brown, assuming he's healthy for rest of season purposes. Says, which other wide receiver would be best? Other wide receivers I would target. In terms of other wide receivers I would target, if you're going to move Judkins, Chase Brown, and Warren, I think that's both are fantastic options. If I was going to look towards another option, he could end up going after Aladdin McConkey. But outside of that, I think those are relatively strong options considering the schedules ahead as we kind of go forward here. Okay, let's see here. Weston Nelson says, hey man, in a 10-team league, questions in the chat. Okay, Weston, let's see what you have here, brother. Okay, if you can do me a favor, Weston, type it in the chat. Again, it's been a while since you probably typed that in, so do me a favor and type that in, and I'll go ahead and I'll swing back around to your question in just a moment. Thanks, man. Patty sends in a question. Let me go ahead and scroll back up to Patty. Patty says, PPR, I have to drop a running back when Irving comes back. Chase Brown, Monangai, Swift, Genty, Dowdle. Irving. 5 max running backs. No one will trade. Yeah, no one's going to trade because they want you to drop your running backs. So here is the current dilemma of which you currently have. In my opinion, in terms of rest of season value, Irving is number 1. Dowdle is probably number 2. Genty is 3. Chase Brown is 4. And then 5 and 6 are Monangai and Swift, to which at the moment, Swift is technically still got the inside track for this job. So Monangai would have to be dropped because he is technically still the RB2 of that offense if in fact Irving was to return this week. Thank you. Now, I will tell you, if you can wait to drop somebody, if you can wait, let's say there's a possibility where you can take Irving off of the IR and swap him straight for Swift, to which if Swift misses another week here, then you don't have to make that decision this week. That's my hope. Thank you. Roy Shaver sends in a question. Roy, thank you. Says rank for week 9. Week 9? I think you meant for week 10, but it's okay. Let's loop Ricard Bass. So of the available here, I would like to probably go after Loop. With Lamar back, I think the offense is going to be in a far better position to score, but not only that, also have primary fantasy upside. Reichard could be another alternative option here. Lutz okay. Bass is okay. I think Loop is the guy that I want in terms of rest of season value going into this week and beyond. As for defenses, Jacksonville, Buffalo, Philly, Baltimore. As for this week, I really do like the potential of what technically Buffalo provides against Miami. But if I had to probably pick one, I mean, if Jacksonville's available, I go for that. I just didn't assume they were going to be available because I would have assumed everybody picked them up to play them against the Raiders this last week. Also, pick 2 between Genty, Walker, Monangai, and David Montgomery. It's very much so dependent on whether or not Swift is active. If Swift is inactive, Monangai and Genty are my 1-2. Otherwise, it's Walker and Genty. So play Genty on Thursday, and then it's either Walker or Monangai as we get closer to Sunday. Thank you. Took care of Emily's question. Abram had a follow-up question. Thank you, Abram. Appreciate that. Says, rate my team. Okay, let's see here. Says, we have Drake May, Patrick Mahomes. So we have to trade one of those two. Brother, you should be... I mean, we got to. Like, what are we doing at this point? There's no reason to hold both unless you're playing in a super flex format. H.M., Barkley, Javonte, Chase Brown. You've got 4 incredible running backs here as you go forward. So the idea of trading one of them is actually relatively solid. But looking at your wide receivers, Jefferson, Pittman, Collins, McConkey, Lamb, you don't have to make a trade. Never mind. I lied. Tyler Warren, Aubrey, Broncos. This is one of the better teams I've seen, not only this week, but for the last 7 weeks of doing these questions. To which at this point, I don't think you need to make a move. If you wanted to, you could theoretically take someone like Chase Brown, who's been playing relatively well, or a Javonte Williams alongside of one of these wide receivers. Let's say you take Chase Brown and you take McConkey or Collins or Pittman and go for the cream of the crop. Go and buy a Puka Nacua. Go and buy, a Jamar Chase. Go for one of the studs at the top of the pack and just go cash in. That's what I would suggest. 2 for 1. Go for an absolute Jaws. Thank you. Alrighty. Continuing on. Thank you, Abram. We had Jimbo Fisher, who says, Slayton, Pierce, Downs. Yeah, as of right now, the order in which I would pick these players up is number 1, Pierce, number 2, Downs, number 3, Slayton. As for your next question in a half PPR, I would pick it up between these 4 options. For now, considering the news of Shaheed being traded, I go Juwan Johnson 1, Theo Johnson 2, Pitts 3, Barner 4. That's probably the direction I go in. Thank you. Finna sends in a question, says half PPR, stop stashing Ayuk and grab Shaheed. Absolutely. Shaheed should already have been rostered at this point, especially considering what he has done thus far this season in terms of consistency of having 4+ receptions every single week. He should have already been rostered. Ayuk, obviously, earlier today, they asked the head coach of the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, whether or not Ayuk would be activated to open up the 21-day practice window. They did not activate him, so he is still a long ways from returning, and even when he returns, in the first 4 weeks of him, returning to the lineup, he is going to be at a limited capacity. So he's not going to be startable until probably the fantasy playoffs, guys. H13 says, in a 12-team full PPR tight end premium double flex format, extra game versus medium, I'm 11-7. We have Herbo, Jacobs, Henry, Kamara, Aaron Jones, Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson, wide receivers Rashee Rice, BTJ, Marvin Harrison, Debo Samuel, Kelsey, Mark Andrews, Otten. Any moves I should make? I'm thinking about offering BTJ, Debo, Mark Andrews for Ibuka and Fab. If you can get away with this trade, I would make the trade immediately. I think the value which Ibuka is going to provide to you and the value you have at which you currently at Rashee Rice, Marvin Harrison, Kelsey, I think is enough to where if I get back Ibuka and some Fab, I'm more than happy to make this kind of a move. I think this is a fantastic idea in your case, considering the depth you have and the ability to be able to rely upon Rashee and Marvin Harrison going forward. And again, not really being able to rely upon BTJ or Debo, considering the environment in both of those organizations as it stands. And getting Ibuka really is going to be the biggest decision of your season in which I think it could carry you going forward. Momo sends in a question, says in a 12-team full PPR, Baker, Dart, Jacobs, Dobbins, Javonte Williams, Hubbard, Collins, JSN, Pittman, Henry, Goddard, Godwin, Pearsall. Help week 10 lineups / trades. Okay, so let's talk about the lineup in general. Going into this week, I would play Jackson Dart at quarterback. I would play Jacobs alongside of considering Javonte is out on bye, Dobbins as my 1-2 combo. So these are the three here at quarterback and 2 running backs. I would play JSN alongside of most likely, I'm going to probably play Collins at wide receiver, then Pittman in my flex, then play Goddard as my tight end. And that would be my starting lineup in terms of a start 7. 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. If you do have another flexible option this week, I think it just purely depends on whether or not Godwin is available. Pearsall looks like he's not playing this week, so it would either be between Godwin and Henry. And I think it just depends purely on a matter of if Godwin's healthy. Otherwise, Henry is your second flex. As for trades that you could theoretically make, ultimately, you have 2 stud quarterbacks. Maybe you can find a team in your 12-team league that needs a quarterback on roster. In the event in which you can, I don't mind the idea of trading one of these 2 in order to accomplish that, because Baker's past his bye and Dart doesn't have a bye until week 14, but effectively Dart is the more valuable of the 2 as we proceed. As in regards to the potential of the rest of your lineup, I would try to keep these 3 running backs because this is the depth in which you need. Hubbard has no value as of right now. He's purely just a handcuff. You might be able to trade him to the Daddle manager just to secure the value there and get something in return. Otherwise, honestly, I look at your team and I'm very satisfied. I like having Collins, JSN, and Pittman. I like Goddard as my tight end. I like the potential of Godwin and Pearsall getting healthy and providing value. At 5 and 4, I don't think there's a necessity to make a move in this circumstance here. I think you're in a really solid position. Bob sends in a question, says full PPR Goff. Oh, by the way, really quickly, just for everyone's sake, just so we're all on the same page, if you've got a winning record right now, 5 and 4, 6 and 3, 7 and 2, 8 and 1, 9 and 0, go after teams in your league that just hit a bipocalypse this week with the Chiefs, Cowboys, Bengals. With all those 3 teams on bye week, there's so much value in the form of Rice, Kelsey, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, additionally Pickens, Javonte, and Lamb. If you can go find a team in your league who is losing those players that need to find a win this week, you should go and you should try to effectively take advantage of their misfortune of having a terrible win-loss record right now and give them players that can help them this week, but take back those studs that I just mentioned. Try to go after those teams that are in desperate situations every week henceforth. That should be the plan of action. Bob says PPR Goff, Caleb, McCarthy, Young, Darnold. Honestly, Darnold is trending towards a position to where I cannot see myself not starting him every week here, especially with bringing in Rashid Shaheed. I think the offense continues to evolve and unlock to a position to where, my goodness, this offense is going to look good. So between the available options, I think it's Darnold or Caleb Williams as the primary number 1, 2. I will say, though, taking on Washington, Goff could be a must start because Washington can't stop a soul, especially with Marshawn Lattimore out now and the revenge game that is implied there. Those are all 3 incredible options. If we're talking about this week in specific, I think I end up probably playing. I probably go Darnold. And then I go Goff second, Caleb third. McCarthy fourth, Bryce Young fifth. Thank you. Volk 21 says Bigsby or Singletary running back situation is rough. Well, here's the reality. If you need someone to start this week, then you pick up Singletary. Because Bigsby is only 100% contingent on Saquon missing this week. So the value which Singletary could provide, especially if he's the outright beat Tracy for the job, which is possible, not out of the realm of possibility, Singletary is the better pickup. Young Money says, would you drop Kamara, Tracy, or Worthy for Parker Washington? In the event in which you need a wide receiver and your running back depth is solidified, I am more than happy to potentially drop Kamara. Because the way that this offense is functioning, the way in which he's produced, I have no potential hope that Kamara can flip it around. It looks like he's really just trying to just cash in the season, which sucks, but it is what it is what it is. Easy E says, thanks, Andrew. Flacco till 90. Yeah, I mean, if Flacco plays till 90, there's always a possibility. At this point, he's a monster. Okay, says in a 6 and 3 first play, 3 wide receiver superflex format, I've got Knicks, JSN, Emeka Egbuka, Quentin Johnston, Bijan, Jacobs, Gadsden starting. Superflex is Brissett. Myers, and my defense is Seattle. Bench is Flacco, Mariota, Tedero, McMillan, Watson, Slayton, Tampa Bay. It says Tampa Bay defensive thoughts. I don't want to pick up Tampa. I don't want to play Tampa Bay. In your situation, I would actually keep and play Seattle for the rest of the season. The only reason you'd ever have Tampa Bay ready is for the fantasy playoffs, because we've talked about their schedule being relatively advantageous throughout those 3 weeks. So you would keep them until then. At 6-3, you can afford to do so. You don't need to make any moves. You've got an incredibly solid roster. Keep it pushing. And like I mentioned earlier, go after teams that are in desperate need. And if you have to send them a quarterback like Mariota because they just lost Jaden Daniels, cash in on that opportunity and go and trade Mariota and Tedero McMillan for one of their best wide receivers on roster. Thank you. Emily Doyle, we took care of that earlier. Ricky Retro says, yo, Andrew, I need some help to figure out the Giants running back room. Singletary or Tracy rest of season? I would like to believe that the answer is Tracy still, but if in your situation, Ricky, probably roster them both just to be safe. But if you told me, Andrew, I can only roster one, I'm only going to roster Tracy. If it ends up being Singletary, I'd rather just not have any running back on that team. Auntie Slayer says, Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson rest of season. Trade one for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, I would trade one for Amon-Ra St. Brown. If I'm specifically looking at the potential of both of these players, I feel like, would I rather have Lamar or would I rather have Josh Allen? Okay, so looking at their upcoming schedule, specifically for the fantasy playoffs is kind of where I want to key in on. Week 15, Lamar, just looking at the upcoming schedule, Lamar gets to take on Cincinnati twice in the next 5 weeks. Like, that in itself makes me think Lamar's going for 40 points each of those games. Now, to begin the fantasy playoffs, if you're not going to get a first round bye, Auntie Slayer, Lamar has Cincinnati week 15. Okay? While Josh Allen has the New England Patriots. Okay? There is a discussion there already where I'm leaning towards Lamar Jackson. And in the following week, Lamar gets, besides the Cincinnati matchup, the next week they get to take on New England, which that's a tough one, while Josh Allen gets to take on and batter Cleveland. So it's just a matter of are you going to make the fantasy playoffs? If you are, and you're going to get the first round bye, you go for Josh Allen there. If you're not going to get the first round bye, I'd rather have Lamar Jackson going forward. Thank you. And yes, move the other one for the Amon-Ra. That's an absolute steal. Thank you. Luke C says, question number 1, week 10, Fields, JJ, Brissett, or Mariota? Genuinely, I think Brissett is the answer. Even against Seattle, I think Jacoby Brissett has done enough over the course of his last 3 starts, in my mind, to justify the position in which he should continue to be a solid starting option. Again, what he has provided fantasy-wise, in comparison to the alternatives, I think he's solidified himself as kind of just a trustworthy option, to which I do prefer him over JJ McCarthy. I do prefer him over Mariota. Can I see Fields outscoring him this week? Yes, because they take on Cleveland. But can I trust Fields outright every single time out? No. To which, in itself, I feel like, yes. Oh, man. Look, here's the thing. If I was in your position, would I... No, I'm going to play Jacoby Brissett. I want the solidification of what he provides. And I think in a negative script, he's going to be a better option than Fields. Even though Fields technically can outscore him, I think there's just too much risk there. Question number 2, pick for rest of season, Brissett, Nix, or Flacco? I think it's either Nix or Flacco here. Genuinely, based on the way that this offense and defense is trending, I think Flacco is the answer for fantasy upside. Nix is second, Brissett is third. Next question, PPR, how do we feel about the Mercado flex week 10 if Benson is on the IR? I don't like the idea of playing any Seattle running back this week. I don't like the idea of playing any Arizona running back this week because they play against Seattle. Last time out, the only value in which it was found against that matchup was in the receiving category, in which, Dan Mercado did find himself a receiving touchdown, but in this most recent game, it looks like Bam Knight is the receiving back there. So, again, low-end RB3, if you're desperate because of the Bipocalypse, sure. Mo Money sends in a question. Says, questions below. Thanks, Andrew, for the help. Yeah, no problem. Says, I have any moves I should make in terms of trades. I feel like I don't have enough firepower for the playoffs. I'm in a 5-4 double wide receiver, double flex format in which May, Judkins, Alvin Kamara, RJ Harvey, Travion Henderson, Sampson, JSN, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Roma Dunze, BTJ, Worthy, and Kelsey are my players. Ultimately, your quarterback is solidified. Judkins needs to have another alternative option alongside of him. To which, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how do we get another potential player on roster? To which, in my current thought process, is go after a team in your league that just went to having, oh, I had Chase Brown on my roster, I had Javonte Williams, I had one of those two guys, and now they're on bye week, and they're in a desperate position, and you can go after potentially trading for them. Otherwise, I think you're probably in a position to which, unless you can find a team in your league that wants Rome Odunze and BTJ, again, that's going to be relatively rare because you're going to have to sell low on both of them. I think you probably just have to hold and just start Judkins and RJ Harvey going forward and hope that RJ Harvey claims a greater stake within the backfield or potentially even Travion Henderson to do so. Otherwise, unless these players pop off and become a tradable asset, I think you kind of have to keep it as you go. Or take advantage of other people's misfortunes and kind of take them out back and trade, do away with them. JV817 says, someone offered me Henderson, Diggs for AJ Brown. I've got JT, JSN, Tetaroa, McBride, Jay Williams, Waddle, as in Jamison Williams, Waddle, Judkins, Shakir, Walker, trying to get playoff ready. Someone offered you those two for AJ Brown. I genuinely would probably rather have AJ Brown. Looking at your team, you have JT at running back. You have Judkins at running back. You have Kenneth Walker. I would rather have all three of those than Henderson. So in no position right now do I need Henderson on this roster. To which bringing in Diggs, I don't need it. I'd rather have AJ Brown. Now, in the event in which you're trading both these for AJ Brown, I would make that deal. Thank you. Jorge Perez sends in a question. Jorge, what's up, man? Says, Parker Washington or Slayton available on the waivers? I think Parker Washington in the short term is going to have more value. Like, when I say short term, I mean the next 2 to 3 weeks in comparison to Slayton. But in terms of rest of season value, I think probably Slayton is going to outvalue him later on in the year. Now, in regards to your current situation, it says in a full PPR team is Darnold, Bijan, Kyron, Sutton, Shaheed, Leggett, Ertz, Kamara, Broncos, Dicker, Benson, bench consisting of Isaiah Davis, Kincaid, DK, Pearsall, Purdy, Brian Robinson, Benson. Okay, yeah, you have Benson. Changes I should make. Yeah, I would pick up both of these players. I pick up Parker Washington first. I pick up Slayton second. I would probably look to put yourself in a position to where you're dropping Isaiah Davis and then also probably end up dropping Shamir DK in order to accomplish this. Actually, no, scratch that. I'm going to start Kincaid every game rest of the season. So I'm going to drop Isaiah Davis and Zach. Nope, you have Leggett. Scratch it. Isaiah Davis and Leggett are my two drops in order to pick up Parker Washington 1 and Slayton 2. Thank you. Chris Moraga sends out a question. Says rank for rest of season. Okay, thank you. Says, I lost Jaden Daniels, Fields, McCarthy, Penix. As of right now, I do believe that Fields technically has more value than both of those quarterbacks for this week. But can I trust that Fields is going to be able to play for the remainder of the season and not get benched? I have no clue. To which in this current capacity with that unknown commodity, I would rather pick up McCarthy for rest of season purposes. 1, Penix 2, Fields 3. But for this week, I'm going to rank Fields higher just off of that, the potential of the matchup itself this week. Awesome person says, hey, Andrew, follow-up question on Diggs/Swift trade chat. Okay. Says, full PPR, you said you would trade for Javonte if I could get Kyron. Is there any, is that any better than what is your, okay, wait. You said you would do this trade for Javonte. If I could get Kyron, is that any better? Yes, I think that's solid. Or what is your preference for rest of season? I mean, obviously, I would still prefer Javonte Williams in terms of rest of season capacity, but I don't mind the idea of bringing in Kyron. Yeah, I don't mind that. That works. Also, I started off at 0-3, and I've been on a 6-game winning streak. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. In regards to the potential here going forward, yeah, if I can get Javonte or if I can get Kyron, I think those both work. I don't love the idea of Kyron considering his lack of red zone utilization, but I think it'll kind of go up as we prolong the season. I think he'll get more and more opportunity there. Also, as we're speaking of the players, I offered me T-Mac for Dobbs. Thoughts? I think I'd rather have Dobbs, honestly. Also, should I drop Kincaid or Pitts for Loveland? I drop Pitts for Loveland. Thank you. All right, continuing on, we had a question that came in from Shahir, who says, hey, Andrew, should I trade away Sutton, Chase Brown, and Shaheed for CD and Bucky? Yes, immediately. 10 times out of 10, give me CD and Bucky, and congratulations on the chip, brother. Also, would you drop Ayuk in a 12-man league? I would. Says he's been on my IR spot. I also have Mike Evans. I need to pick up. Yeah, as of right now, if you need the IR positioning and the openness of your bench, I make the move. But if you're going to make a 3-for-2 trade, I think, again, you open up space in itself there. But yes, I think it's worth it. I mean, you don't need to have him on roster because he's not going to be startable for a while. Lee Flores sends it a question. Lee, thank you. Says in a half PPR, my team consists of Hurts, Hurts, Caleb Williams, Bijan, Judkins, Genty, Sharps, Sutton, T-Mac, Olave, London, Devontae Adams, McBride, Kincaid, Texans, Pinheiro. Championship team, brother. London, Adams, Olave as your top 3 wide receivers. With Sutton, incredible. T-Mac, if he shows up in any capacity, incredible. McBride is already a stud. Texans and Pinheiro is fantastic. You have Bijan, Judkins, Genty, which is a fantastic trifecta there. And then you have Jalen Hurts. I have no problems with this team. Again, if you can abuse someone in your league by taking advantage of the fact that, again, they do not have players to be able to help them win in the next couple weeks because they go on bye, then take advantage of that opportunity. Outside of that, this is a really, really solid team here, Lee, and you just keep it rolling, brother. LZ7 sends it a question. LZ, thank you. Says in a PPR, I'm 5-4 in a double flex format. Do I trade Dart, Dobbins, and JSN for Allen, Barkley, and Amon-Ra? I would, yes. In my opinion, I think the value which you're getting in return in terms of an upgraded quarterback with Allen, an upgraded running back to Barkley, and then just a very slight downgrade from JSN to Amon-Ra is sufficient enough to where I would take this side and very happily run with it for the remainder of the season because all 3 of these prospects have already passed their bye weeks. So to which your value there is kind of locked in. Let me see here. Just want to confirm. Yeah. All of them are past their buys. You should just take this deal. I think that is very much so a steal on your end. I have Baker, Dobbins. At this point, then you would trade Baker. And yeah, you should make the move. I believe you should at least. Thank you. ISO Flip says trade Dobbins for Flowers. In a full PPR, sure. That's fine by me. Thank you. All right. Robert Goodell says in a full PPR, quarterback is JD, running back is Hampton, Vidal, Judkins, Swift, Marks, Charbonnet, Sampson. Wide receivers are Lamb, Sutton, BTJ Pearsall, Trey Tucker, Golden. Tight end is OG. Thoughts on trades? Yeah, looking at the team as a whole, obviously you have JD5 as your quarterback. So we need to make a quarterback play. If there's a team in your league in which they have 2 quarterbacks, fantastic. Let's go ahead and make a move for that. In the event in which you cannot and you have to go pick up a quarterback off of the waiver wire, of course, the possibility of going after a potential Sam Darnold, a potential player of the caliber of Jacoby Brissett, Justin Fields, JJ McCarthy, all very much so viable options going forward. But in regards to your situation at running back, Hampton and Vidal is a relatively solid duo. Because Hampton's not returning until week 12 or beyond that, actually week 13 after the bye week, I would probably suggest that unless you're in a situation to where you have a winning record, you might want to just trade the duo in order to maybe just Hampton by himself in order to get value in return in terms of a player that can help you right now in the form of someone like Jalen Warren, maybe. Outside of that kind of a situation, in terms of potential trade possibilities here, I think it's tough because ultimately, your most valuable prospect is CeeDee Lamb, to which, unless you move him, trading Sutton and BTJ is not possible right now because you'd be selling low on both of those options. Swift is injured, so you'd be selling low. Judkins is coming off of a dud performance and a dud shoulder, which is selling him low. Hampton, again, you would theoretically be selling low. So everything in which your current roster kind of consists of would be you selling them on pennies on the dollar, to which I would rather wait a couple weeks before making a move. Just improve quarterback by either hitting the waivers or finding a team with 2 quarterbacks on roster to which you can get one in return for now. Thank you. All right, Austin S. says, keeper league, Caleb Williams or Jackson Dart next year. I honestly, brother, in fantasy football, it's way different than in regular football. And when he gets Malik Neighbors back and they maybe go and they address a wide receiver need during the draft, I think the potential what Jackson Dart provides in terms of the future for fantasy purposes is more valuable than what Caleb provides because of his rushing upside. Tier Limit says Pierce or Loveland top waiver priority. I think it purely depends on what your team needs more than anything. If you've got a solidified tight end in the form of someone like Brock Bowers and you need a wide receiver, then the decision is made for you. Vice versa, if you have a unstable tight end position, then you prioritize Loveland. Thank you. The man 0907 says, I have Nix and Goff. Would you drop Goff for Flacco for rest of season? Lions seem to only run Again, this has kind of been the case for multiple weeks here. Obviously, this week I would like to play Knicks over Goff. So in which I would probably feel very comfortable dropping Goff or Flacco for rest of season. I'm actually okay with that. So yeah, let's go with that. Thank you. Shung Bull says, I'm 4-5 and another full PPR league team is in the chat. Okay. See what you have here, brother. I have JD5. I have Hall, Kamara, K9, Spears, Jordan Mason, Amon-Ra, Tedder McMillan, Olave, Dobbs, Xavier Worthy, and Tyler Warren. What do I do? I mean, as of right now, obviously we need to address the quarterback conversation. Until then, your starting priority RBs are going to be K9 and Hall. Your starting starting wide receivers are going to be Amon-Ra, Olave. You're going to be playing Tyler Warren at tight end for the foreseeable future. In terms of the flex play, I think that's going to be a matter of just the best available matchup of the alternatives. But obviously, you need to address, pretty heavily the potential what you can get for a quarterback. Whenever you end up getting whatever, the question then becomes, what can I do in the future? Next week, I'm trading away Hall after he pops off this week against Cleveland, and then afterward, I would probably try to get a running back that is coming off of a dud performance, and then also try to go pick up a waiver wire potential tight end because you will have Tyler Warren on the bye after this week. So I think that needs to be addressed. That's my current thought process on the matter. Probably flexing Dobbs in the immediate future here with what you have available. Upgrade quarterback, look for a backup tight end off of the waivers, and try to sell Hall next week if you can potentially do so. Thank you. Velos408 says Lamar or Darnold this week. No, it's always going to be Lamar. In no capacity am I ever going to suggest Darnold over him unless Lamar's on bye. H13 Production says in a 10-team, one flex format, I'm 2-7. My quarterback is JD Flacco. Okay, so we're going to drop JD and go pick up a quarterback. What do you have available? It says putting in bids on McCarthy, Goff, Love, and Loveland. I would go pick up Goff for this week. Against Washington, I think that's a great play. In regards to your potential tight end situation here, who do you have at tight end? Let's see. You have Henry and Chase Brown at running back, Dowdle, Charbonnet, Buka, Quentin Johnston, Debo, Jennings, Dobbs, and Hunter. So you should probably priority bid Loveland because I don't know who you have at tight end. And then try to probably get either Goff or Jordan Love this week as your quarterback. Outside of that, says, would you drop Charbonnet plus Hunter? Well, unless you have an IR spot for Hunter, he's droppable because you're not going to utilize him for the next 4 weeks. And you need the next 4 weeks to make the playoffs. So he's not going to contribute to your roster. So considering there's no contribution there, he is droppable. Also, outside of that, Charbonnet is still a keep. Thank you. Boy Blue sends in a question. Says, Andrew, is Aubrey worth holding onto during his bye? Also, would you claim Torrey Horton or Christian Watson? Considering the Shaheed trade, I would rather pick up Christian Watson. Would you claim Watson to play him over ETN this week? I'm starting Texans defense. I would still play ETN this week. And would you drop Joe Burrow to stash Jaden Reed? Has Hampton? Yeah, considering the way that this Titans defense, the Cincinnati Bengals defense is trending, I don't expect them to break the playoffs. Therefore, I don't expect Joe Burrow to return. So I do believe that Joe Burrow is a droppable piece. Yes. Now, in regards to your current situation of Aubrey, is he worth holding for the bye? I would say yes. Thank you. Pee-wee sends in a question, says Dowdle or Jalen Warren rest season? Dowdle. Thank you. Easy E sends in a question, says, do you ever sleep? Questions in the chat. Do I ever sleep? That's a really good question. I would say I do, but again, you guys see me for half the year. I show up in the beginning of August and I leave at the end of this December, early January. Then I disappear for 6 months. What do you think I'm doing in those 6 months? I'm hibernating for the season, right? So yes, I do sleep, but not during the season. Thank you. It says drop Watson or Slayton for Tez. I would drop, neither. I would rather keep Christian Watson and Slayton. I don't want Tez. So I'd rather keep them both. I'm assuming that is what you meant, right? Drop one. If you meant dropping Tez for one of these two, I would drop Tez for Watson because I want to have Watson more than Slayton. Thank you. All right, continuing on. Tier limit says full PPR 12 team consists of Herbert, Jonathan Taylor, Dowdle, Lamb, McConkey, Hawkinson, Trey Tucker, JCM Hubbard, Tez Johnson, Prescott. Okay. So we've got a little bit of a dead weight with Hawkinson, Trey Tucker, JCM Hubbard, and Tez Johnson here. So your only value on roster is between Herbert, Taylor, Dowdle, Lamb, and McConkey, which again, those pillars are incredibly powerful. To which at this point, in terms of my advice for your team, you are hoping to hit the waiver wire and find value there. You're holding Hubbard and JCM because they have no value being dropped. I would probably look to drop Tez Johnson unless we're going to utilize him within the flex this week. If there's a possibility in which Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, potentially Darius Slayton. Players of that capacity, Parker Washington, are available in your league. That's what we should prioritize. Otherwise, your primary plan of action is to go after teams that have very, very, busted win-loss records, 2-7, 3-6, and that have their primary studs going on bye this week. Again, the upcoming bye weeks for this season are going to be relatively kind of rough going forward here, to which we have the Bengals, Cowboys, and Chiefs on bye this week. Those are a bunch of stud players that teams are going to be missing. Can you go and steal one of those players off those teams? Like, can you go steal George Pickens? I know you have Lamb on roster, but why not go steal George Pickens or T. Higgins and try to go give a player in exchange for that? Try to give some depth. If that's not a possibility, maybe going and buying a Ferguson this week after relatively dud performances, and then on top of it hitting the bye. I think that's a possibility in which you could explore. Otherwise, like week 12, Broncos, Chargers, Commanders, there's going to be a lot of players missing. Week 11, Colts and Saints. Week 14, again, people are going to probably try to offload their week 14 players in the form of Dowdle, in the form of the Patriots, in the form of the Giants and the 49ers, because they won't have them to help them in that given week. And if you guys play in ESPN leagues in which week 14 is a playoff week, honestly, uninstall or just go ahead and find a better commissioner. Thank you. Moving on to S-Box, who sends in a question. My team is Nixon, Stafford, Genty, Kamara, Monangai, Rashad White, and Bam Knight. Collins, Flowers, Franklin, Kittle, and Kincaid. Do I use my number one waiver on Pierce? I would say, considering your current wide receiver depth, do I drop my number one waiver wire on Pierce? Brother, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it to that capacity. I would rather wait to see if somebody has a catastrophic knee injury at a different position, to which I would go after those players. Because yes, you can make a trade for Pierce, but I don't see myself playing him over Flowers or Collins. To which, when I look at your running backs, Genty, you know what? To be honest, when I look at your team, I think Pierce, he actually starts for you in your top 7 players. He starts in your flex. Is it worth it? No, but in your circumstance, if you need wins now and you're dealing with a lot of potential disastrous situation in terms of a win-loss, maybe it is the right decision. Otherwise, you play Kittle and Kincaid every week going forward. Thank you. Emily Doyle says, one more question. Do I drop Rashad White for Charbonnet? Ooh, that's a really good question. I think in the event in which Kenneth Walker continues to get the workload down in the red zone, I think Charbonnet could get eliminated in terms of his value, to which Rashad White is a better not only handcuff because there's a possibility of re-injury to the form of Bucky Irving, but also Bucky could miss this week, or Rashad White could be a receiving threat, very similar to mid last season, between weeks like 6 through 15. Rashad White was a top 24 running back throughout that span of time. So I'd honestly rather just keep Rashad White for now. Roger says, full PPR trade Drake London for Nico Collins and Travion Henderson. Don't like it. I have Keenan Allen, Dobbs, Genty, Kamara, Hampton, Hunt, Brian Robinson, Gadsden, Tootin, Fergie, and Fields. Brother, I feel like if you're going to trade a quarterback that just went, a receiver that just went for 3 receiving touchdowns, I would like to get more than Nico and Henderson. I would like to get Nico and potentially just throwing out, just the potential. Okay, again, because maybe not every single one of these players are going to be on a team. What am I doing? That's the wrong thing there. Sorry about that, guys. Let's go ahead and pop that. You can see my screensaver there, of course, my Windows. In regards to the running backs here on screen, I would say there's a very good likelihood that if you're going to go ahead and make a trade to where you're getting a Nico, I would like to accompany that with at very least a Kenneth Walker, an ETN. Maybe if I'm feeling really spicy with it, a David Montgomery. I want somebody that has more concrete value. D tier and up. That's what I'm thinking. Thank you. All right, Jay sends in a question. Says, full PPR, Genty or Swift or Monangai? Here's the issue. We don't know who's starting between Monangai and Swift. We don't know if Swift is healthy until Sunday. So as of right now, if you were to tell me, Andrew, Swift is healthy on Sunday, I would play him over Genty. But because I don't know his status, I had to rank him lower. Now, in the event in which Swift is active, Monangai goes down in value. But if Swift is inactive, I would play Monangai over Genty. But if you're telling me, Andrew, I can only play one of these 3, At this point, I would gamble it and play one of these two. I would wait for the Swift and Monangai positioning. Thank you. Tony Lopez says, so for context, full PPR Superflex limit 2 quarterbacks per roster. My team is Allen, McCarthy. Wide receivers are Adams, BTJ, ETN, Swift, Monangai, Goddard. So I have a couple trade options. They are part 1. What is part 1? I don't see part 1. I see part 2. It says trade options are McCarthy. Oh, this is part 1 of your 3-part question. Understood. Thank you. Part 2. Trade options are McCarthy for Devontae Smith or McCarthy, Swift, Monangai for Breece Hall and Wan'Dale Robinson. I like the first one. If this is a super flex format, I don't like it as much because I don't know who your next quarterback is going to be. But in the event in which this is a 1 QB league, give me Devontae Smith there, happily. I could pick up Brissett or Mariota. I mean, I don't understand. Unless, is this a two? Okay, this is what I want to know. Is this a super flex? Oh, it is. What am I saying, man? I'm so stupid. I just read it out loud. I'm an idiot. Okay, hold up. I could pick up Brissett or Mariota. Fields on the waivers. Replace McCarthy. What do I do? Do I rather have... Yeah, if I was in your position, I would like to have Devontae Smith as my wide receiver 2, and I would go pick up Brissett for the rest of the season. Number 3, it says also, I get Brissett off of the waivers. I could easily get Kyler Murray off of his owner too. Or should I just go for Tet without giving up McCarthy? No, I'd rather have Devontae Smith. Thank you. Appreciate it. Alrighty, sorry about that again. I wasn't reading, obviously, or just completely read Super Flex and just completely forgot it was the case. Velas 4away says Lamar, Sutton, Olave, Christian McCaffrey, Dowdle, Ertz, BTJ, benches Tootin, Ferguson, Chuba, Mooney, Darnold, Bourne, and Io Manor. Who is droppable? Bourne is droppable. Io Manor is droppable. Mooney is droppable. Everybody else is just keep them on roster. So those are your 3 droppables. Is the starting team okay? The starting team is okay as of right now, considering Ferguson will come back from bye next week, and then you'll be in a really solid position. I think it is very much so solid. Thank you. Says, thanks for the advice, Andrew. Rate my team in the chat. Okay, let's see what you have here, brother. Says, I have Josh Allen, Puka Nacua, St. Brown, Derrick Henry, Genty. This is a double running back, double wide receiver, double flex format. Bowers, Garrett Wilson, Quinshon Judkins, Parker Washington, Pitts Harvey, Aaron Jones. Yeah, this is a really solid team, brother. I feel like with the roster that you currently have constructed, it's going to be fucking difficult to beat your team in the fantasy playoffs. Genuinely. Like, people are going to despise the fact that they have to play you. Like, it is, brother. Like, again, do you have a weakness? It's definitely not a wide receiver or quarterback. I mean, really, it's not at tight end. I mean, brother, your only weakness is technically Genty or Judkins, depending on what matchups they have. But even then, you can swap them back and forth. I don't see a actual glaring weakness. I just see maybe tough matchups in the fantasy playoffs to which you can go prepare for and make some trades there. Okay, let's see here. LZ says YouTube TV or Hulu TV. I have YouTube TV. I am very much so a YouTube TV. I mean, again, I am a YouTuber. Brother, I had better have YouTube TV, right? But you know what? They should give me YouTube TV for free for the amount of, I mean, I swear, man, I can't even get YouTube TV for free. I got to pay for that every month. But either way, yeah, I understand that I haven't been able to watch the Monday Night Game on YouTube TV, but I found my own stream yesterday. Thank you very much. Kenny sends in a question. Says full PPR. Is Parker Washington worth adding over Trey Tucker or Josh Downs for now? As of right now, I think Josh Downs is more valuable. I think Parker Washington, in terms of the short term, has a little bit more value, but Josh Downs, in terms of the long term, is the more valuable piece, in my opinion. As for Trey Tucker versus Parker Washington, even in the games in which we saw, Jacoby Myers missed this season, Trey Tucker did nothing. So I don't believe that it's going to change anytime soon to where I'm like, oh, okay, well, now Myers is gone, so Trey Tucker is going to have value. Well, Jacoby Myers missed week 7. Okay, in his absence, technically, yes, in week 7, Trey Tucker did have himself 5 catches for 33 yards, but that's not really much of anything against, that was against Kansas City, so I don't really want to hold that against them. But going forward, ultimately, I'd probably rather have Parker Washington than Josh Downs. Jay says in a full PPR, Quentin Johnston or Tez? Quentin Johnston, 10 times out of 10. Half PPR, DJ Moore or Breece Hall? Breece Hall, thank you. Better Call Saul sends in a question. Better, what's up? Says trade Hall, Rome Odunze for Puka. Yes, I would. Genuinely, I would. I have Kyron Williams, Judkins, Mark, Stevenson, Hall, Benson, Stevenson. Running backs, wide receivers are JJ. Yeah, I make this trade. Give me Puka Nacua rest of the season. Thank you. Tier Limit says, in regards to my previous question, go Loveland or Pearson, my number one priority. Looking at what you currently have on roster, it says you have Hawkinson at tight end. I think Loveland has to be your number one priority there, because you still do have value in like Lamb, McConkey, Trey Tucker, Tez Johnson. I think Loveland is the priority in this circumstance. Thank you. Luis Castillo, what's up, my man? Thank you very much for the very generous super chat there, Luis. Thank you. Says, hey, boss, I'm 8-1 in 2 leagues, 6-3. Okay, very well. In another. Going for the three-peat in one of them. Thanks for all the advice. Thank you very much. Did you have a question, Luis? No? Good to go. Big Bear Andrew? Big Bear, what the heck does that mean? Am I going to Big Bear? I haven't been to Big Bear since I was a kid. All right, Rudy sends in a question. Says, I have number 1 waiver wire. Should I hold Marks and Charbonnet, Dobbs, Tracy, Tootin, Spears, Loveland on the waivers? Okay, so hold up. Let me look here. So you have Marks and Charbonnet. Do I drop? Okay, I could justify dropping Charbonnet for Tracy. Says, I have Gibbs, Etienne, Javonte Williams. Javante's on a bye. I'm playing Etienne, which I don't feel great about. I would feel pretty good about it. Trust me, it's going to be okay. Again, Stroud's not playing this week. The offense is going to fall apart there for Houston. Expect for it to be a relatively solid week here in terms of the rushing opportunity. So Etienne and Gibbs are going to be great plays this week. I would like to drop Charbonnet to pick up Tracy for rest of season purposes. Thank you. Because I do think eventually he's going to get himself a wider workload share. Age 13 production says, follow up from earlier question. I'm 2-7. Offer Johnston plus Debo, Johnston/Debo plus Jennings/Dobbs for Rome Odunze. If I could trade away, let's say Debo and Jennings in order to get Rome, I'd be willing to do so. Actually, if I had a preference between Rome, Nico, and Pittman, between those available options, I mean, I look at the upcoming schedule for the Bears. It's really solid, guys. Like New York Giants, Green Bay matchup. Then they get Detroit, New England, Washington, Minnesota, Las Vegas. Like I like all those matchups effectively. Pittman, I think, is probably Pittman's a really good play too. Looking at it as a whole, I think if I'm going to prioritize someone here, it's Michael Pittman Jr. That's who I would rather have on roster out of all three, genuinely. So if I can trade away Debo and Jennings, or Debo or Johnston and Jennings, or Dobbs and Debo, I mean, really at this point, when I look at rest of season value, because of Pearsall's absence, I think Jennings might be a keep, but technically because of Kraft going down with injury, Jennings is the priority move, to which you would move Jennings and probably Debo, because I don't trust Mariota, in order to get Pittman here. Thank you. It says Marvin Harrison as well. I mean, shit, Marvin Harrison's not a bad option either, but Pittman's the priority. Wilson, if healthy, Wilson would be probably close to Pittman, but Pittman's still priority there. Thank you. Tim Schwartz says full PPR. Trade Devontae Smith and McLaurin for Henry. If I can get Derrick Henry for both of these, that's a steal. Make the move. Abram, what's up, man? Says my team in a PPR is May, Prescott, Javonte Williams, Jacobs, Jalen Warren, Chase, McConkey, Diggs, Pittman. Brother, this is such a fucking good team. Guys, how do you have such good teams? I don't understand it. I genuinely do not understand it. Okay, so you've got 2 top 8 quarterbacks. You've got 3 top 8 running backs. And then Jalen Warren is like top 12 potentially, if not top 15 rest of season. Then you have Jamar Chase, McConkey, who are top, 2 top 12s. You have Pittman, who's in my opinion a top 12. Kittle, Ferguson, who are 2 top 12s. And then you have Dicker in the Broncos defense. Brother, what changes do you need to make? Don't make any moves. Again, unless you're going to go and steal someone off of a team that's on bye, that's the only suggestion I have here. Otherwise, you have too many good players, genuinely. Raymond T sends in a question. Says, Kyron for Jalen Warren and Olave. I have Bijan as my RB1. I mean, theoretically, if you need wide receiver depth, then and you think that Olave is sufficient enough to help you out here, let's see here. Says, would you trade Bijan and Ibuka for... I mean, at this point, if Olave is going to start for your team and you play in a triple wide receiver 1 flex format of something of that exchange to where Olave starts weekly for you, I think this trade is definitely worth it. You the best, brother. Thank you very much to your limits. Did you have any other questions here? Nothing. Okay, good to go. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Luis Lucero sends in a question, says, should I drop McLaurin? And if so, for who? I mean, if you have the opportunity to drop McLaurin, I don't think it's really worth it because he's going to just continue to be your IR player until he returns. And once he returns, I think he's going to have enough value in negative scripts to which I think you should probably keep him on roster. If you're saying, Andrew, I'm in a position to where I can't even wait for him to come back, I have to win now, then I go pick up Alec Pierce. Jorge Perez sends in a question. Jorge, thank you. Says, I just realized Loveland is available on my waivers. Is he a must add or should I stick with picking up Parker Washington or Slayton? My other tight ends are Kincaid and Ertz. Well, I would probably prioritize picking up Loveland number 1 and dropping Ertz and then going after Parker Washington or Slayton second and third. That's how I would go about addressing this situation. Thank you. So yes, I think it is worth it. Okay. We've been here for an hour and 50 minutes almost. I really do appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel. I know there's been a lot of questions, and I'm sure, again, I wasn't able to answer any of the live chat questions. I'm going to go ahead and try to answer a couple of those right now before we close out today's live stream. I do appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel. I do see many of you guys who are definitely reoccurring members of the community. David Waters, long time no see, brother. Hope you're doing well. Says, do you think Lockett is worth a dart throw? I don't believe so. Constantino Gonzalez says, my boy, with Arizona going with Brissett, do you think DeMercado might gain more, some sneaky value? I don't think so. I think when Trey Benson comes back, his value is completely sapped. And in regards to Little Jay's question, who says, full PPR, RB2 and flex options, Woody Marks, Tyron Tracy, Harvey. Check out my video from earlier today. I posted my top 36 running back rankings. Thank you. All right, guys. I'm going to answer a couple more questions, then we're going to close it out here today. I do appreciate y'all. I'll be back tomorrow in regards to my top 40 wide receiver rankings and then also live streaming tomorrow. Again, I appreciate y'all. Again, if you guys want my all-encompassing rankings every single Sunday, and of course, I mentioned this earlier, and I'll continue to kind of broach the conversation in regards to potential place for this upcoming Thursday's slate between, of course, we have two teams, the Denver Broncos, and of course, we have the... Hold up, give me a second here. Why am I not logged in? Can I log into my account? Thank you. Am I going to need... Yeah, I need a verification for my code. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, I'm in my account. There we go. So in regards to some potential plays going into this weekend, actually, speaking of plays, did my play hit today? Hey, let's go. Okay, so I suggested this earlier today in regards to my running back rankings video during my Better Read ad, in which I was just telling you guys about signing up code Andrew. Again, you get a free $10. If you made this play today, obviously it hit. Obviously looking good so far. Love to see that. But in regards to this upcoming Thursday's plays, again, I mentioned earlier, Brock Bowers receptions. Specifically, I want him at 5.5. And then if we talk about potential other plays here, I like Genty in terms of his receptions at 2.5. We'll take that. I like the potential of Cortland Sutton. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I like the potential of Cortland Sutton at an all-time low of 3.5 receptions. I cannot even believe that it's sitting there. I think that is a bargain. And then I like the potential of Bo Nix for obviously just touchdowns in general, because Bo Nix has been able to do so on a consistent basis as of late. That's 4 plays for 6x. I think that's a great play going into this upcoming Thursday night. Again, you can use code Andrew, make that first time deposit minimum of 10, and then additionally make that first time play within a real cash play and get my rankings every Sunday. But of course, be able to follow these plays as we proceed throughout the remainder of the season. Otherwise, of course, if you guys want to ask questions and get rankings, you can always check out the Patreon, like I've mentioned before. There's a link down in the description for both of these potential paths to explore. Thank you. Is Jaden Daniels droppable? Yes. My bad, forgot about Benson. No, you're good to go, my man. Oni says drop Isaiah Davis for Tootin. I would. Or hold if Hall is disgruntled. I mean, if Hall is disgruntled, I mean, better luck next time, buddy. Just sign with another team this offseason. I would make the swap. AJ says, questions in the chat. Thanks, bro. Okay, AJ, thank you, man. Says, I have Ferguson on a bye. Do I pick up Fannin, Loveland long-term, or Otten? I think Otten is technically the... No, you know what? Pick up Loveland. I think Otten could be a better play this week, but I think Loveland is the right decision to make in terms of not only this week, but for rest of season purposes, because if he establishes himself as the clear and away number one, it may give you the opportunity to ship away Ferguson in future weeks. For QB2, Brissett, Kyler, or Fields, Brissett. That is the better play of the group. Grab Parker or Pierce. As of right now, considering the post-Jacoby Myers trade, it's Pierce. Thank you. Andrew, Pierce, Lockett, Emeka starting. Oof, brother. That's tough. Swollen says Loveland is also out there. I need flexes. Flex at tight end. I mean, that's a great option. Swollen, honestly. Says, who would you pick up? Who would you pick up? Debo, Jennings, Tucker, Dobbs, Slayton, Pierce, Downs, Franklin. I have Sutton, Washington, or Watson. I mean, ultimately, in a full PPR going into this week, I might just prioritize Parker Washington because of the PPR status of the 1 week boost. But ultimately, I think Debo Samuel is the guy that you want to have on roster. Priority number 1, Jennings 2, Pierce 3, Downs 4, then Parker Washington 5. Actually, geez Louise, brother. There's so many good options here. Debo's probably 1, Dobbs is 2, Jennings is 3, Downs 4, Pierce 5. That's how we should prioritize it in that order. Human says, what's your read on Jacoby Myers trade? I mentioned it at the beginning of today's live stream. I went on like a 5-minute rant regarding both Jacoby Myers and Rashid Shaheed. I think Jacoby Myers, again, he only is going to find sufficient value in the event in which Brian Thomas's ankle injury is more significant than earlier expected, because I think he's going to play out wide. I don't expect him to play in the slot. As a Bucky owner, would you drop Tracy for White? I would, yes. Would you drop Parker Washington for Godwin? By the way, you know what? I don't even actually like this trade. No, I wouldn't. I would keep Tracy. Apologies, Antonio. Would you drop Parker Washington for Godwin? No, I think I'd keep Parker Washington, especially if I need wins right now. If you're okay with not, like, if you're like, Andrew, I'm making the playoffs, I'm looking towards the future, then yes, pick up Godwin. Andrew, another trade possibility in the Superflex: McCarthy, Swift, and Monangai for Genti. I don't mind that, Tony, but I don't love I think I'd rather have both of these. I don't love that trade, man. Genti just bothers me. Oh, Shaheed 2, my bad. It's an 8-man league. Oh, brother, it's an 8-man league. At this point, I would still prioritize Dobbs and Debo. Still. Vert, what's up, my man? Says, who should I drop? This is going to be the final question this afternoon. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Who should I drop and or target for the trade in a 12-team league? Half PPR: Daniel Jones, Gibbs, Chase Brown, Swift, Monangai, Benson, BTJ Sutton, McLaurin, Gadsden, Fannin, Tez Johnson, and JMO. Okay, looking at the available options you have here, I would, look, because your quarterback Daniel Jones, and he's great, I would probably try to go first and foremost, not even talking about trades. You need to go pick up a backup quarterback for week 11. So go and look at potential options in which you can go pick up an advantageous matchup there for week 11. In regards to the running back, Gibbs, Chase Brown, Swift, Monangai should all stay on roster. I think BTJ, Sutton, McLaurin is your biggest weakness because BTJ and McLaurin are both injured. So you should probably go look to try to make a pickup at wide receiver. Obviously, JMO and Sutton will suffice until the meanwhile. But if there's a possibility in which you could end up making a move to go get a wide receiver in exchange, maybe go and take advantage of some team in your league that just has Lamb, Pickens, T. Higgins, Chase going on by, you could end up going and trading for one of those players. Otherwise, I would say Devontae Smith is someone that I'd like to go after, potentially speaking. I think there's a possibility in which you could go buy low on Addison. You could go after the potential of someone like DK Metcalf as a buy low prospect as well. Additionally, Rome Odunze, a buy low prospect. These are potential avenues in which you can go about, to which you can improve that wide receiver conversation as we proceed here. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all. That's where we're going to go ahead and call it for this evening. That's going to be it. Again, I'd love to stay here and continue to answer questions, but I got to get to not only dinner because I haven't eaten anything all day, but additionally on top of that, preparing tomorrow's video. I'll be back tomorrow night answering questions as well, starting at 6 p.m. PST. So if you have any questions tomorrow afternoon, I'll be here. And I'll additionally be here, of course, without that, the wide receiver rankings video, Thursday, tight end ranking video, along with quarterback, and then, of course, streaming after the Thursday night game. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to cue the music. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. Put in your waiver wires, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.